Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Sign in for 3 years, starting from Capturing the Goddess. Chapter 81. The sudden situation made Ning Luo's heart violently tighten. He raised his head and stared at the place where the spray was violent. After an instant, his pupils shrank suddenly. The water splashed down gradually. At a certain moment, a giant snake with its body covered with green scales and a triangle-shaped head suddenly rushed out from the bottom of the lake, and then opened its huge and hideous mouth, facing Ning Luo violently. Bite. There is a wild ferocity in the diamond-shaped pupils. The violent attack of the giant snake caused Ning Luo's palm to slap again on the surface of the water. Suddenly, the surface of the water splashed, and with the help of this force, Ning Luo's body was completely separated from the surface of the water. Tilted down slightly, and finally formed a parallel arc with the lake surface. The toes lightly touched on a cluster of water waves like lightning. Suddenly, Ning Luo's body made a bang, as if out of the mouth. The shells are average, sticking to the surface of the water. It burst out. Boom, boom, boom. S figure furiously swept across the small island, and several violent waves bursting behind him, which was the momentum caused by the failure of the giant snake's attack. There is the vigor of the fishy wind behind him. Ning Luo didn't care too much. With the help of this shock, he avoided the giant snake's attack several times, and finally he was only 10 meters away from the island. Glanced back from the corner of his eyes, and found that the giant snake was chasing through the water with its huge mouth open. With a sneer, Ning Luo flicked his finger, and a piece of wood fell onto the water. Just before it was about to be corroded by the venom in the lake, Ning Luo's toes hit it and his body sank slightly. Then burst out again, and after an instant, he finally entered the range of the island. His body flipped over, his feet squatted slightly, his palms lightly pressed on the ground, and he landed steadily. Stepping on the island, Ning Luo glanced back. Discovered to the time of entering 10 meters around the island. The ferocious giant snake was a little daunted and didn't dare to move forward, swaying on the tail of the snake and wandering outside the island. Stretched out the scarlet ground snake letter, stared at Ning Luo fiercely for a while, then reluctantly sank into the bottom of the lake again. Looking at the slowly calming lake, Ning Luo breathed a sigh of relief. He turned around and looked at the small island. The area of the small island is not very large. There are lush bamboo forests and some of the flowers and plants look lively and quite beautiful. The breath of the strange fire. Taking a deep breath, such a close contact, it seems that even Ning Luo can feel the existence of the strange fire hidden in the island. There was a fiery flame beating in the dark eyes, and he clenched his fists tightly. Ning Luo secretly swears in his heart that this time, no matter what, the strange fire must be obtained. Not right. Besides the strange fire, there is also Queen Medusa. She is one of her goddesses, and she wants to get the chance to sign in from her. Ning Luo's breathing gradually stabilized, standing on the edge of the lake. After a while, he took a light step and slowly dived into the bamboo forest. Walking on the path in the bamboo forest, the quiet atmosphere, except for the extremely small soft sound of Ning Luo's footsteps on the grass blades, there was no other sound. Unhurriedly, he turned to the end of several trails, and the line of sight in front of him gradually became brighter. At the moment when he turned the trail, Ning Luo's body suddenly bends down, hiding his figure quickly. Among the tufts of grass, he looked through the gaps in the leaves and looked at an open area in the center of the island. Here is a circular open area. The surrounding bamboo and flower bushes are cleaned up, small and smooth stones, scattered in it. The stones are sunken into a small pool in the open area. The small pool was filled with crystal clear water. On the surface of the water, white mist was engulfed. Even if it was far apart, Qing Lin could still feel the extreme cold temperature contained in it. Ice Spirit Cold Spring. His eyes were fixed on the crystal clear water. After a while, Ning Luo took a long breath of cold air in his heart. It turned out to be a small pool filled with water. Somewhat scary. The shock in the heart slowly subsided. Ning Luo's eyes gradually moved, and finally stayed on a lotus seat carved out of strange crystals in the center of the small pond. At this time, on the lotus seat, the blue flame is slowly rising. Looking at this cyan flame, Ning Luo's eyes suddenly shrank to the size of a needle. In the dark eyes, a zeal-called longing broke through Ning Luo's heavy restraints and appeared in the teenager without any cover. Above the delicate face. This group of cyan flames is very spiritual. When it is tumbling slightly, it sometimes condenses into the shape of a lotus, and sometimes it condenses into a small cyan flame snake, hovering in the lotus seat. It is docile and extremely cute. Staring at the cyan flame that constantly changes its shape without blinking, Ning Luo, who is hidden in the bushes, twitches at the corners of his mouth. The palm of his hand on the ground, because of his excitement, has already slammed into the mud. In the ground. Finally, I'm looking for you. Ning Luo stared at the blue flame firmly, and Ning Luo pressed his lips tightly, although he had never seen what Qing Lin's heart of the earth looked like. That crystal lotus stand is obviously not an ordinary thing. Every time when the cyan flame is about to swim out of the lotus seat, a faint white mask emerges abruptly and then ejects the abnormal fire back. Looking carefully across the pool, Ning Luo found that every time the different fire came into contact with the mask, the ice-cold spring in the pool would be reduced by a small amount. Obviously, the crystal rosette should be supported by ice. The strength of the spirit cold spring was only able to trap the cyan flame in it. After scanning the small pond, Ning Luo's gaze moved towards the left. When a face that was almost at the level of glamorous beauty was printed in his eyes, Ning Luo's faint breath unconsciously suppressed it again. Facing this Do Huang-level super powerhouse, Ning Luo felt as if his heart was pressed against a big stone, extremely depressed. The Queen of Medusa at this time is not in the slightest different from the energy body that appeared outside the city before. A set of luxurious and expensive purple brocade robe envelops the graceful and delicate body. The plump, fierce and exquisite figure releases enchanting temptation, a pair of long and narrow lavender eyes. The waves of the eyes are flowing, and the charm is natural, and it can almost draw the sight of every man. Under the purple brocade robe, a purple snake's tail is exposed, sweeping lazily, releasing wild and strange amorous feelings. The current Queen of Medusa, her beautiful eyes are staring at the cyan flame in the small pond. Under the reflection of light, the lavender eyes are also flashing the arc of flame. Staring quietly at the cyan flame like this for a long time, Queen Medusa suddenly sighed slightly, looked up at the sky, and immediately posed a snake's tail slightly, and the fiery body slowly stood up. "It's time," whispered lowly. A rare hesitation flashed across Queen Medusa's coquettish cheeks. After a moment, the hesitation turned into firmness. Under the purple brocade robe, two snow-white wrists were exposed. The delicate hand slowly formed a few knots in front of him. With the change of the seal in Queen Medusa's hand, the crystal rosette suddenly trembled, and the light curtain on it gradually disappeared, and when the light curtain disappeared, the cyan flame that had lost its restraint suddenly rushed out. See, the storm rose, and it turned into a fierce fire in the blink of an eye. Under this cyan fire, the ice-cold spring in the small pond is evaporating at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ignoring the bamboo that was rapidly withered by the smoke, Queen Medusa bit her red lips with her teeth. Her hand slowly eased the buttons of her brocade robe, and immediately a perfect jade body that looked like a masterpiece from heaven was naked. Is exposed in the bamboo forest. In the lush green bamboo forest, the perfect plump body like white jade releases the temptation to make the population dry. Beautiful face, inadvertently revealing a touch of coquettish like a fairy, slender white neck, showing an elegant arc. A drop of crystal water emerged from the neck, and then rolled down all the way, skimming across the body, and finally drawn a stunning arc, dripping down. The slender willow waist seems to be less than a full grip, but it is slightly thin, but there is a pliable feeling. The flat and delicate lower abdomen, without a trace of excess fat, is very convincing at first glance. One couldn't help but the urge to reach out and swim slightly. Under the slender waist, there is a wild purple snake's tail. The snake's tail wiggles slightly, showing the strange amorous feelings. Among the grass, Ning Luo stared at the naked body that made the man crazy. Before he noticed it, an evil fire suddenly rose up from the lower abdomen, making his face flushed with horror for a long time. After that, he gritted his teeth and ran the fighting energy, suppressing the restless evil fire in his body. This woman is terrible. She raised her head again, but Ning Luo only dared to stare at the strange fire that was burning in the air. Because of a carelessness, he exposed himself. Allowing the purple brocade robe to fall to the ground, Queen Medusa slowly stepped forward, her beautiful eyes staring at the blue flame in the air in a blur. Biting his red lips, he whispered softly, "If you want to practice according to the rules, you don't know when you can touch the threshold of Duzong. Therefore, if you want to quickly advance to Duzong, there is only this way to go. NS. The slender jade hand was lightly pressed against the incense shoulder. Queen Medusa bent slightly to the different fire in midair, and then slowly raised her head to look at the place where the energy fluctuates sharply on the city wall, and a little cold light flashed in her beautiful eyes. The thin finger pointed to the blue silk in front of his forehead, and said lightly, "If the evolution is successful, all humans here today will have to stay in the desert forever." After saying this slightly icy speech, Queen Medusa casually tore off the purple ribbon with the blue silk in her hand, and suddenly, the black and soft hair was spilt down all the way, vertically between the willow waists. Shook his head lightly. The hair moves with it, random movements. Let Queen Medusa add a bit of charming amorous feelings. Hands closed slightly, Queen Medusa's eyes closed slightly, and the jade hand was constantly changing with strange handprints, and with the change of its handprints, the energy fluctuations between the bamboo forest suddenly became intense. Hiding in the bushes, Ning Luo, who discovered this change, was shocked, his body arched slightly, ready to deal with various emergencies at any time. What on earth does she want to do? In the bamboo forest, the fluctuations became more and more intense. In the end, a huge energy vortex was faintly formed over the small island. Looking at this change, Ning Luo said in astonishment. The light kept expanding and shrinking. After a while, a roar that resembled a lion's roar and some roared like a tiger roared from the rays of light, and shortly after the roar came out, the dazzling rays of light suddenly rose. Under this dazzling light, Ning Luo closed his eyes reflexively. After a while, he opened his eyes again, but he was shocked to find that there was a huge purple snake over the small island, is standing in suspension. The purple giant snake has a slender and powerful body, with a faintly elegant beauty. The lavender pupils are not as ferocious as the giant snake that Ning Luo encountered in the lake before, but it reveals a little tranquility. And indifferent. The purple giant snake slowly twisted its body in midair, and its huge head slightly turned to the chaotic city wall. At this time, the lavender pupils passed a few cold lights. On the edge of the city wall, the man in black robe hovered in the air and glanced lightly at the rather embarrassed flower snake on the opposite side. After a while, he seemed to have a sense of feeling, suddenly turned his head, and stared at the city closely. The purple light in the corner of the sky narrowed the eyes under the black robe, and whispered softly, "Is the evolution going to begin?" "This is the body of Queen Medusa." Ning Luo couldn't help but whispered while looking at the huge purple snake in the sky in shock. Smiled bitterly and nodded. Ning Luo also increased his vigilance a lot in Yiyan, staring at the huge purple snake in the air tightly without blinking. The huge body hovered in midair, and the rich purple light gushed out of the purple snake, and finally almost wrapped the whole temple in it. Above the sky, after circling a few times, the huge purple snake suddenly uttered a clear moan, and then darted down towards the blue flame without hesitation. This mad woman dared to face the strange fire. Seeing the purple snake's behavior, Ning Luo took a breath and hurriedly backed away. Under Ning Luo's steadfast gaze, the huge purple snake flew down in an instant, without any hesitation, desperately rushing into the cyan flame. At the moment when the purple snake plunged into the different fire, the scream of Queen Medusa suddenly numbed the scalp. Hearing the scream of Queen Medusa from the fire, Ning Luo suddenly shivered fiercely all over his body, looking through the cover of bamboo leaves, looking at the blue flame in the sky. Among them, the huge purple snake was tumbling wildly with its huge body. From where Ning Luo's eyes could reach, he could clearly see the snake scales on the purple snake's body. It began to twist rapidly, and the last one was scorched black by the different fire, and fell weakly from the body of the purple snake. After the snake's scales fell, the red blood gurgled out, but the moment after the blood appeared, it was burned into nothingness by the terrifying temperature of the different fire, causing it to be on the body of the purple snake. There were dazzling traces. Squeak, squeak. Standing on the small island, Ning Luo could even hear the squeaking sound from the different fire, and because of the rapid flow of blood, the huge body of the purple snake was also shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's hard to imagine what kind of intense pain the current Queen Medusa is suffering from the arrogant and powerful king. Not only the pain on the body, but even the soul, is inescapable of being burned by the different fire. The pain is really terrifying. Standing on a stone in the distance, Ning Luo, who was staring at the flames closely, had a pale face. Queen Medusa's screaming scream was so stern and almost heart-shattering, it really gave him a lot of shock. I have to say that this woman is really paranoid and crazy. Because the movement made by Queen Medusa was so loud, the shrill screams almost resounded through half of the city. Countless snake man powerhouses flashed on the roof, looking at the place where the purple light was full of horror. Some people wanted to rush over, but they were resisted by the fierce purple light. Can only stand outside at the moment, looking at the huge purple snake fiercely tumbling in the blue flame from a long distance away. Above the sky, a light and shadow rushed toward the purple light, and after a while, stopped outside the purple light, revealing the solemn Furukawa face. Has Queen Medusa begun to evolve? Looking at the cyan flames in the temple in the distance, Furukawa whispered, his palms clasped together unconsciously, and smiled bitterly. Now, can I just wait? Is the final result? Ning Luo swept his gaze under the cyan flame. I found that the small pond that was full of ice and cold springs had already turned into a black lacquered cavity. Looking roughly, the cavity was probably at least a dozen meters deep. Moreover, the bamboo forests around the different fires turned into ashes in an instant. The breeze passed by, and the large bamboo forests turned into flat ground. What a terrifying destructive power! Wiping a hand of sweat from his face, and feeling the increasingly hot air around him, Ning Luo's body shook slightly, summoning the purple fire gauze to the surface of his body, and retreated several times. After the step, it felt a little better. Within the cyan flame, Queen Medusa's screaming scream was high-pitched for nearly half an hour. This gradually became weaker. At this time, perhaps because the power has been exhausted, the huge body of the purple snake has almost stopped rolling, and the body that was originally covered with beautiful purple scales is now scorched black. His body was more than 10 feet long, and it was burnt to only 2 or 3 feet. It is hard to imagine how many bones and blood were burned in this body by the abnormal fire. Beyond the purple light curtain, more and more snake people stood on the surrounding roofs, staring blankly at the tumbling purple fire. At a certain moment, the desolate neighing sound resounded throughout the city. Suddenly, a sad atmosphere enveloped the most sacred city of the snake human race. In the cyan flame, Queen Medusa's body was lying still, letting the Qing Lin heart of the earth burn continuously on her body, and the faint smell of burnt smell slowly spread out. Failed. Outside the purple light curtain, the black-robed man suddenly appeared next to Furukawa, looking at the Medusa queen who had lost her movement in the fire. He sighed inexplicably, fell silent for a while, and immediately bent towards the latter's location. Although she was equally arrogant and indifferent, she had the courage to burn her body in a different way for the sake of evolution. King, she felt that she should be given considerable respect. Ah, looking at the cyan flame, Furukawa sighed slightly. Is this Queen of Medusa, who once caused a headache for the powerful class of the Dagama Empire, just like this? It's really dramatic. The entire city, with the annihilation of Queen Medusa's scream, gradually fell into deathly silence. After a while, a pair of hateful eyes shifted to Furukawa and the black-robed man in midair. Ignoring the hateful gazes, the black-robed man stared faintly at the cyan flame in the distance. After a while, the eyebrows under the black robe wrinkled slightly, raised his head, and looked at what suddenly became much darker. The sky was slightly silent, and there was a dignified touch in the cold voice. Something is wrong. What's wrong? Hearing this, Furukawa's expression was also tense, and he hurriedly asked. Heaven and earth energy suddenly rioted. The black-robed man looked at the sky and said softly. Upon seeing this, Furukawa quickly raised his head and looked at the sky. His face changed slightly. The sky that was originally clear and clear suddenly became a lot darker at this time. Clouds came from nowhere, slowly, enveloped the sky. Sudden changes made everyone look at the strange shape in the sky in a daze, with a face full of bewilderment. Boom! Amidst the dark clouds, there was a roar of thunder, and silver lightning flashed wildly in it, like long silver snakes. What's the matter? I noticed the violent energy contained in the dark clouds. Furukawa swallowed and asked dryly. The black-robed man stared at the dark clouds in the sky closely, and sneered. I once read an ancient book, which records that when some ancient legendary monsters are born or promoted, they will be incoordinated due to the huge energy in the body. Causes some heaven and earth visions, though. These legendary beasts are extremely powerful. Some of them are outstanding, and they are even comparable to the human powerhouses of Dozong Do Sheng level. It seems that there are not many legendary beasts in the current fighting spirit continent. Looking at the current situation, it is most likely. Maybe it should be caused by Queen Medusa. Quote. What do you mean? She has evolved successfully. Furukawa's eyes shrank slightly, a little bit astonished. Not sure. The black-robed man shook his head and said softly. Do you need to evacuate? Furukawa frowned and asked hesitantly. Retreat. Haha, even if she evolves successfully. But after being burned in a different fire for so long, the energy loss is not small. At this time, finding a place to recover from the injury is the wisest plan. The black-robed man said in deep thought. At this time, the black-robed man showed a grim smile. So, regardless of failure or success, her energy is not enough, so at this time, it is a good time for us to start. Seeing the horrible smile of the black-robed man, Furukawa was shocked, and immediately asked, Your target is not a strange fire. The black-robed man sneered and said, Different fire. Haha. Have you heard of the Eye of Medusa? The black-robed man smiled faintly. At this time, Furukawa understood that the purpose of the black-robed man had never been a fire, but Medusa's eyes. Medusa is the queen of the snake clan. Each generation of the snake clan queen will inherit a pair of beautiful eyes, and those who look at it will be petrified. If you get Medusa's eyes, don't you get a terrifying fighting skill? At this time, the powerful aura of the black-robed man burst out directly blasting the flower snake, and then flew in the direction where Medusa was. Furukawa hesitated, just about to look up. There was a huge roar in the dark clouds above his head. In an instant, the sky and the earth were bright, and a huge silver thunderbolt shot down from the clouds, and finally penetrated the purple light curtain and smashed into the cyan flame. The thunder came fast, and went faster. The thunder blast in everyone's ears had not completely dissipated. Dark clouds above the sky. It started to fade quickly, after an instant. The blazing sun once again enveloped the city. Ning Luo looked at the dense cyan mist around him, frowned slightly, and then slowly walked into it. As he gradually walked into the center of the island, the cyan flame above the midair appeared again, but now the cyan flame had returned to the size of the previous fist, floating quietly in the midair, constantly changing its form. Looked down from the different fire. On the ground, a giant black snake was lying silently, the cold body, no doubt with the dead snake. But Ning Luo knew that Medusa did not fail, but evolved into a little snake. Ning Luo walked to the huge snake body, listening to the sudden sound. Ning Luo's body trembled suddenly, slowly twisting his head, looking at the source of the sound. Suddenly, his pupil suddenly shrank to the size of a pinhole. Under Ning Luo's gaze, the scorched black giant snake corpse that fell stiff and soft to the ground, the scorched black skin on it suddenly fell off slowly. The speed of falling off gradually increased. At the end, Ning Luo seemed to be able to see vaguely that there was something faintly about to break out of the giant snake corpse. Black dust, gradually falling down. At a certain moment, a strip of colorful light and shadow. Fierce shot out from the fog. The speed of light and shadow is almost a barrier that penetrates the space. It was so fast that people were caught off guard. In the dark eyes, the colorful rays of light flickered slightly, and Ning Luo's face was full of horror. He didn't dare to have any physical contact with the other party before he knew what it was. The fighting energy in the body just started, and the sharp wind-breaking sound carried by the colorful light and shadow rang in my ears. The colorful light and shadow that came rushing towards Ning Luo, without the slightest foreplay, suddenly stopped his body in front of Ning Luo. Between extreme movement and extreme silence, it was almost transformed into a perfect circle, without the slightest distortion. The sense of the colorful light and shadow stopped a few centimeters in front of Ning Luo, and finally exposed its body to the latter's sight. The horror caused by the previous thrilling collision was on his face. When Ning Luo looked at the creature that appeared in front of him, the horror couldn't help changing into a dull and stunned, looking quite wonderful. The creature that appeared in front of Ning Luo was a small slender snake measuring only about 2 centimeters long. It was covered with tiny colorful scales. Lilac snake pupils, with a faintly strange feeling, a strange fresh scent, lingering on the body. Although it is only a snake body now, it reveals a sense of elegance and dignity. Although the little snake does not look too ferocious, it is a bit too beautiful. This beautiful creature, I am afraid that many women will forget their fear and aversion to snakes. Chi Kai Xiao snake didn't have too many sharp attack parts on his body, but Ning Luo was able to vaguely perceive that in this small body, there is something that even a strong Do Huang would not dare to underestimate. The force of terror. The little snake hovered in front of Ning Luo. In the lavender pupils, there was no killing aura, but it looked extremely pure and clean. Although Ning Luo knew clearly that this little snake might have been the result of the savage name of the Queen Medusa who had frightened several empires around the desert, it was still difficult to resist it in his heart. Ning Luo circulated the Tianqi Yujuju. Suddenly, I saw the colorful little snake flicking its small tail slightly, staring at Ning Luo in front of her with big lavender eyes, and leaning forward slightly, tentatively. However, he was afraid of the white flames above Ning Luo's body. At the moment, he quickly retracted his head, curled up slightly, and his lavender eyes actually looked at Ning Luo with a little pity. The colorful little snake revolved around Ning Luo twice, and did not show any intention of attacking, which made Ning Luo breathe a sigh of relief. Twirled his tail again, and the colorful snake suddenly stayed above Ning Luo's palm, with its crystal clear eyes, staring at the ring on Ning Luo's finger with some coveted eyes. Then he raised his head and made a few soft neighing noises at Ning Luo, with a soft tone, as if he was acting like a baby. Ning Luo gently stretched out his hand. At this time, the little snake stretched out Shinzi and licked Ning Luo's hand. Ding, hold up Queen Medusa's body and get a chance to sign. Ding, Queen Medusa licks her hand and gets a chance to sign in. Ning Luo was shocked. Can this little snake bring himself a sign-in opportunity? Then, wouldn't it be that as long as you keep playing snake in the future, you can always get the chance to sign in? Little guy, follow me from now on. Ning Luo smiled. Ning Luo knew that Medusa would evolve into a snake, and now, it is the best time to subdue her. This time, he not only got the fire from the heart of the Green Lotus, but also the snake transformed by Medusa. No loss in blood. Ning Luo put away the fire of Qing Lin's heart. Then Medusa received it in his sleeve. Just when Ning Luo was proud, suddenly a powerful force surged. Jia Jia, little guy, I didn't expect you to be the last fisherman. The voice suddenly came down. Ning Luo was shocked when he saw the black-robed man coming here. He is a member of the soul race, and the soul race is not a small family, and the opponent is a strong person above Do Huang, so he can't be an opponent. Boy, I didn't expect Qing Lin's heart to fall into your hands. Where is Queen Medusa? The black-robed man asked. The purpose of the black-robed man is Queen Medusa, so what he cares more about is not the abnormal fire, but Medusa. At this moment, his eyes were fixed on Ning Luo. It turns out that Queen Medusa is also on your body, Jia Jia. You are lucky, kid, but you met me. As he said, the black-robed man explored with his hands, and instantly rushed towards Ning Luo. NS, your uncle. Ning Luo suddenly flew out. He couldn't beat him, so he could only run. Suddenly, Ning Luo stretched out the purple cloud wings and flew towards the sky. Want to run? Can you run? The black-robed man smiled faintly. The black-robed man immediately chased after him. The black-robed man transmitted the sound to Furukawa, and Furukawa and others also knew that the heart of Qing Lin's heart was on Ning Luo's body, and they flew by, wanting to chase Ning Luo. The people of Furukawa just flew over the island. 3 lights and shadows appeared on their flying route like lightning, and the 3 people of Ueme with gloomy faces appeared. Behind them, there is almost overwhelming. An army of snake men. Come as you want, go as long as you want. Where is the snake human race? On Yanstab's body, the fiery vindictiveness is like a rising flame, glaring at Furukawa and others, and the sound is rolling in the city like furious thunder NS. Go away. Seeing that the route was blocked, the impatient Furukawa looked up at the figure that had almost turned into a small black spot, couldn't help shouting, and waved his palm. The light blue flame quickly condensed into a fireball in front of him. Then carrying fiery energy, he violently shot a few people at Yanqi and left. As soon as the light blue flame appeared, the surrounding temperature rose a lot. It seems that the flame that Furukawa mastered was not an ordinary vindictive flame, but this blue flame was inferior to the abnormal fire. I think it should be something similar to Ning Luo's Zaihuo. HMPH, when it comes to alchemy, no one here can compare to you Furukawa, but when it comes to fighting power, you should stand on the side of my uncle. However, although the blue flames are extraordinary. However, Yan Thorn was not afraid. Instead, his face was filled with a sneer of disdain, his palms protruded, and he shook slightly. The fiery vindictive energy on the body suddenly condensed into a palm of flames the size of a foot. Burst out. Easily wrapped the blue fireball in it, and then squeezed it fiercely. With a slight muffled noise, the blue fireball suddenly turned into tiny flames in the sky and gradually dissipated. The first day of contact, it was obvious that Yan Tiao had the upper hand in strength. Want to come to his star, it should be higher than Furukawa. Yu Mei glanced coldly at the Furukawa people in front of her, turned her head slightly, her beautiful eyes stared at the tiny black spots in the distance, her eyebrows wrinkled slightly, for some reason, her back always gave her a somewhat familiar feeling, shook his head lightly. I pondered for a while, and gave up the idea of sending someone to chase and kill. Now their main enemy is Furukawa and others. Moreover, at this time, they are already in a disadvantage, and it is impossible to separate a strong fighting king to go pursuing and killing, without the flying speed of the fighting king. If only the Douling were sent, they would not be able to catch up without the wings of fighting spirit, so they were helpless in every possible way. Yu Mei had to give up her plan to hunt down. Kill them. A group of short-tailed snakes. Furukawa stunned, and on the side of Yan Shi's body, fierce vindictiveness also surged out, and he shouted coldly. I'll stop them. Go chase the previous person. If it's late, the fire must really fall into the hands of others. The black-robed figure moved slightly and flashed directly in front of the three of Furukawa, shouting in a low voice. Hearing this, Furukawa hesitated a little, and then nodded heavily. He had no doubts about her strength. With the other three fighting kings, it was impossible to cause much harm to her, so there was no nonsense at the moment, and with a wave of his palm, he took the two Yan Shi and rushed away in the other direction. Get me back. Seeing the actions of Furukawa and the others, the three of Yan Tiao shouted angrily, and they were just about to flash past. The figure in the black robe appeared in front of him like a ghost. Sleeve robes flicked lightly, and a violent wind surged into the sky. In the gang wind, the huge blue wind blade overwhelming the sky shot out violently, blowing the three people back quickly. At this time, Furukawa and the others took advantage of the gap, rushed into the sky, and chased Ning Luo. The cold and weird black-robed man no longer stayed. The cyan wings of vindictiveness behind it vibrated slightly and turned into a black light, flashing out of the city in an instant, and then quickly disappearing in the direction of Ning Luo's rushing. Soon after the black-robed man disappeared, in the northeast and southwest of the desert, two lights and shadows flickered like a moon chasing the stars. After a while, he appeared in the sky above the city. Looking down at the panic in the city, his face was extremely ugly, his hands were swiftly waving, two huge grudges, slammed on the huge cyan wind layer, and they should meet inside and outside. After that, I just cracked it. Chasing. After breaking the wind layer, Yu Mei and the trio flashed up into the sky again, and before they had time to say hello to the two who had just arrived, the trio took the lead in chasing the place where the black-robed man disappeared. The two behind them also hurriedly followed after a moment. 5 streams of light, carrying the shocking weather, flashed across the sky in an instant, and then disappeared to the edge of the sky. In the vast desert, wind and sand are raging. Within the sight, the same golden color extends to the end of the sight. Above the blue sky, a figure suddenly flew by. The huge wind pressure directly pressed a shallow sand mark on the sand surface. Only after a while, the sand mark was caused by the wind. Carrying yellow sand, it is perfectly covered up. Soon after the figure flew past, 3 lights and shadows came one after another. On the yellow sand that had just been filled in, there were 3 more massive sand marks in done. 3 lights and shadows flew away, and another black shadow appeared with a more terrifying speed. After the black shadow disappeared, 5 lights and shadows flashed again. After experiencing such repeated destruction, this yellow sandy ground seemed to be emitted in a strong wind. Low and helpless sobbing. Holding Qing Lin in the palm of his hand, Ning Luo frantically vibrated the purple cloud wings. With the help of the wind in the wind, his speed was almost terrifying than the fastest flying beast in the desert, and the yellow sand flew past him. He licked his tongue slightly in his mouth and swallowed 2 chi-chi pills into his belly. Ning Luo's chi pills filled his mouth had been swallowed nearly half in this short period of time. It can be seen that, how terrifying is such a desperate flyby and consumption of vindictiveness. Swept wildly again for a while, Ning Luo's tight face suddenly changed, and he turned his head slightly, only to see the 3 small black spots at the end of the line of sight, gradually becoming bigger. These guys are too persevering. Looking at the Furukawa and others who were catching up so quickly, Ning Luo felt a little panic in his heart. Those are 3 strong fighting kings. If they face each other, I am afraid that a slap can slap myself to death. Your Excellency, in Furukawa of the Lower Gama Empire, please also ask friends to return the foreign fire object in your hand to the original owner. Please rest assured, as long as the foreign fire is perfect, Furukawa will definitely not let your friends suffer. The thunder and rage resounded through the desert for a long time. I'll leave it to you to have a ghost. Ning Luo murmured inwardly, glanced back at the corner of Ning Luo's eyes, and couldn't help but cursed inwardly. These guys spoke nicely, but the speed of chasing was getting more and more anxious. The distance between the 2 sides is getting closer and closer. Without answering Furukawa's words, Ning Luo just wanted to retract his gaze, but his pupils shrank slightly. Not far behind the 3 of Furukawa, a black shadow was rushing over at an extremely terrifying speed. After the purple moire appeared on Zion Wing, the speed of Ning Luo's flying by almost doubled in an instant. Crazy flying figure, when passing through the air, it turned out to make a little sonic boom in the air. It can be seen that Ning Luo's speed at this time. How terrifying. As Ning Luo's speed skyrocketed, the Furukawa and others, who had been gradually approaching him, were suddenly stretched away again. Far behind, the Furukawa trio stared at the almost teleporting figure ahead with their mouths stunned. They couldn't help but feel a wave of weakness in their hearts. This speed is really too fast, right? As almost comparable to the speed of a wind-type Do Huang. Is that guy also a fighting emperor? They didn't know the true identity of Ning Luo, so they thought that Ning Luo was a strong fighting emperor. A thought flashed quickly in his heart, and Furukawa's face changed slightly. Immediately, he squeezed his fist fiercely. Even if the opponent was a Duhuang, Furukawa would never let him take the strange fire away smoothly. You need to know that in order to obtain this strange fire, he paid a very generous reward. Only then did he invite Yan Shi and Feng Li, among the top 10, to venture into the depths of the desert and accompany him to the strange fire. So, in any case, he will not give up on this strange fire. Even if the opponent is a Duhuang, that is impossible. When Ning Luo's speed surged, Yan Shi and Feng Li were on the side. The complexion also suddenly became extremely ugly. Obviously, they had also thought of going with Furukawa. The 2 looked at each other, and both shook their heads with a wry smile. It is indeed not easy to get the generous rewards, Furukawa said, as she was still grateful for the disappearance of Queen Medusa. Unexpectedly, in front of this, there will be another mysterious strong man who does not know the details. This twists and turns makes these 2 famous strong men of the Gama Empire feel helpless and bitter. Different fire, really is something that can drive a lot of strong people crazy, murmured with a wry smile. Feng Li turned his head and looked at the gloomy and angry Furukawa. I didn't expect that this calm and easy alchemist master would not be able to maintain his previous demeanor in front of this strange fire. This really made him experience the allure of the strange fire again. Chasing. He wants to see where he is the strong one, as long as he knows his identity. I don't believe it. In this Gama Empire, there are people I can't afford to offend by Furukawa. He suppressed and hummed angrily. With a sound, Furukawa's vindictive wings shook slightly. The speed suddenly accelerated a lot, and he quickly chased the small black spot in the distance. Hey, Lao, he seems to be really angry. I don't know where the strong guy is. If it's the Jama Empire, I'm afraid he will be very unlucky. Offended a 6th rank alchemist, that's nothing. It's too fun. Yan Shi couldn't help grinning as he looked at Furukawa, who was already angry. Feng Li nodded slightly. Indeed, a 6th rank alchemist, even a Duhuang strong, would not easily offend him. After all, the nepotism of a pharmacist is really scary. As long as he knows your identity, he can invite a large number of friends every day, and then take turns in battle. Even if you can't kill you, then I am afraid that you will be exhausted. However, although the 3 of Furukawa increased their speed again, they were still hung far behind Ning Luo, and the distance was gradually increasing. In this situation, Furukawa's face was slightly blue with anger, but he was a little helpless. After all, they had already turned on their speed to their peak state, and they wanted to be faster, but it was already impossible. Just as Furukawa was gnashing his teeth with anger as he was getting further and further away, a dark shadow chased after them like lightning from far behind, and appeared in front of them for a moment. The strong snake man is chasing. They are extremely fast in the desert, and they have gathered 5 strong fighting kings. We chase separately. Furukawa yelled loudly. After the former disappeared from sight, he frowned, looked back at the end of the sky, and said in a deep voice, "Old lion, Fangli, go away, remember, Yan Cheng see you, be careful." Hey, okay, it's a pity, I still wanted to fight the snake man, but looking at the current situation, it seems that I don't have this chance. Yan Shi nodded and smiled. There will be opportunities in the future. Now they are crowded, so let's withdraw first. Furukawa smiled reluctantly. Hehe, don't worry too much, he will definitely be able to catch up with the guy in front. Seeing Furukawa's face, Fangli smiled and comforted. Oh, hope, if it really doesn't work, it's probably because I have no relationship with the strange fire. With a light sigh, Furukawa arched his hands at the two of them, and said in a deep voice, "Two people, be careful, leave." The wings on his back vibrated slightly, and he turned and shot out of the desert. Hehe, let's go, too. Seeing Furukawa's disappearing back, Yan Shi and Fangli also smiled, their wings vibrated behind them, and they turned and rushed away in another direction. Soon after the 3 of them disappeared, 5 lights and shadows flashed like a meteor. After a while, they stopped where the 3 of Furukawa had stood before. They are separated. After a little sense, Yume frowned slightly and looked at the other 4 people. What should I do? Separately chase. Yume, you chase and kill the 3 of Furukawa, and I will chase down the fighting emperor with Yan stab. A snake man in a gray robe whispered softly. This snake man is quite old and has wrinkles on his face. It was full, he was obviously quite famous among a few people, so he heard his arrangement, that is, even the grumpy inflammation sting did not say anything to resist. Old Yin, you and Yan Tiao are not the opponents of the Emperor Do. In the holy city, the 3 of us got together, and she got off easily. Mobaz frowned. Don't worry, we won't bump into him. I have left signs along the way. If the Nanshi guys come, they will follow my signs and catch up. When we meet, the Emperor Do you can't eat well, but you, if you catch up with each other, you must leave a profound lesson, and go straight to my snake-human tribe. If you walk out unscathed, my snake-human tribe's face will not be completely lost. The gray-robed old man said in a hoarse voice. Yeah, Yu Maichao's face was covered with frost, she nodded slightly and stopped talking nonsense. She glanced at the other 2, the wings of vindictiveness behind her back spread out, facing the previously scattered direction of Furukawa trio. Rush away. Let's go, Yan Thorn. I have fought against the 3 emperors of the Jama Empire. If I can come into contact with the black-robed man, I should be able to recognize his identity. Even if he runs away this time, in the future, my snake-human clan will find the place where it is today. Looking at the 3 people of Yume who disappeared quickly, the gray-robed old man squinted his muddy old eyes and said lightly. Yeah, Yan Spike nodded, fierce light throbbed in his eyes, and his back flapped slightly, turning into 2 shadows with the gray-robed old man, and at the same time rushed away in the direction where the black-robed man flew. ... The huge scorching sun hangs high in the sky, like a big fireball that constantly releases flames. The hot sun is swayed in the golden desert, and the tiny sand particles are smoked and burned like red. The small iron particles are average. In the desert, due to the hot temperature, wisps of heat seep out from the yellow sand, and finally evaporate the space into a twist and illusion. Looking into the endless desert, a black figure suddenly appeared slowly. Seeing that dusty face, it was obvious that he had spent a lot of time in the desert. The figure walked with some heavy steps, and gradually walked up to a towering sand dune, looked around, then took out a sheepskin map from Najia, and carefully checked the most accurate route. Looking at the route above, we seem to have gradually approached the depths of the Tagore Desert. The fingers moved slowly along a route. Xiaoyan licked his dry lips, his voice slightly low and self-conscious. Talked to himself. Oh, This Tagore Desert is really too big. It took half a month to get here from Rock Desert City. If it weren't for the precise desert supply stations on the map, that would be fun. That's it. Xiao Yan sighed, and laughed helplessly with a bit of pain. After Xiao Yan left Rock Desert City, he followed the route on this map and headed towards the depths of the Tagore Desert. The weather in the desert was extremely unpredictable. So Xiao Yan could only choose a safe time period as much as possible, and then spread the Xian wing to fly by. For most of the other time, he chose to walk on foot. In the Tagore Desert, in addition to some monsters hidden in the sand that need attention, the most daunting thing is the snake man in the desert. In the desert, few people are willing to make enemies with them. After all, the trick of manipulating a poisonous snake to sneak attacks is really hard to guard against. But these snake men, who are a big trouble for ordinary people, did not cause any trouble to Xiao Yan, who had accurate maps and the powerful soul perception of Yao Lao, before every danger came. Xiao Yan was able to easily avoid the snake tribe and some inspection teams in advance. Of course, if the encounter with the snake man was due to an accidental and inevitable accident, Xiao Yan did not intend to keep his hands, but directly used thunder means to kill the opponent before the alarm sounded. He knew very well, what kind of miserable end would it be if a large number of snakes besieged and killed in the Tagore Desert. Fingers moved along the route, and finally stayed slowly on a red dot representing danger. This small red dot is in the entire map. There are 8 in total, distributed in several different directions in the desert. Among the snake people in the Tagore Desert, apart from some small and medium-sized tribes, there are also 8 huge guys. Those are the 8 red dots on the map. They are the most powerful tribe among the snake people. They have a high status in the desert. Except for Queen Medusa, they also don't buy each other. 8 behemoths dominate the Tagore Desert in several directions, and in the depths of the desert, there is a main road drawn on the map. It was the red dot pointed by Xiao Yan's finger that intercepted it. It's really unlucky. Frowning at the scarlet red dots, Xiao Yan sighed helplessly. Among these large tribes, there are usually fighting spirits and even the strong snake people of the fighting king level. The guard, so he wanted to sneak past without knowing it, which was obviously impossible. It looks like a detour. He smiled bitterly and shook his head, even with Yao Lao's whole card. Xiao Yan couldn't run wildly in the Tagore Desert either. The snake human race can compete with the giants like the Gamma Empire for so many years without being destroyed, and naturally has his strengths. Therefore, it is undoubtedly extremely stupid to single-handedly mess around in the snake man territory. Just as Xiao Yan was sitting down and looking at the map, a group of people suddenly flew across the sky. At this time, Ning Luo Xianyi was flying in the sky and suddenly saw a dark shadow on the ground. Hey, isn't that Xiao Yan? Ning Luo knew that Xiao Yan was guarded by Yao Lao, so he should also have some strength. In that case, Ning Luo suddenly had a bold idea in his heart. Suddenly, Ning Luo suddenly changed into Xiao Yan's appearance, and then turned around, showing his face, looking at the man in black robes. Jia Jia, boy, why didn't you run away? The black robe man asked. He hadn't seen Ning Luo's face before, and now Ning Luo stopped, he could see clearly. But now, Ning Luo has transformed into Xiao Yan's appearance. Ning Luo smiled slightly. Dad is afraid that you can't catch up, wait for you. The black-robed man was furious. He has never been insulted like this before. This kid claims to be his father. How can he accept this? Boy, you are crazy, you are not afraid that I will beat you to Papa. The black-robed man said coldly. Then wait until you can catch up with me. Ning Luo said. Suddenly, the wind attribute exercises turned around. Earth level low-level fighting skills, instant wind. Shunfeng is a low-level fighting skill of the ground level, a fighting skill treasured by the ancients, which was given to him by Elder Zan, and Ning Luo practiced it for a long time, so that he could not beat it one day, and used it when he escaped. Actually, Ning Luo still thanked Mr. Lu Xuan, if he had not received 9 years of compulsory education. Familiar with the truth that he can't beat and run away, I am afraid I will be planted here today. Suddenly, the Xian wings opened, and a wave of wind attributes suddenly enveloped Ning Luo's body. Ning Luo's speed instantly increased more than 10 times, and disappeared in front of the black-robed man. Jia Jia, Earth-level escape fighting skills. Kid, I didn't expect that. I still underestimated you. said the black-robed man, and immediately chased after him. Ning Luo looked at Xiaoyan on the ground, and his heart blossomed with joy. Now, he has a scapegoat. Suddenly, Ning Luo swooped down towards the ground and came to Xiaoyan. Past Xiaoyan's side in an instant. Xiaoyan glanced at the figure and muttered, "Teacher, how come the person who just passed by me is so like me?" Yao Lao he said, "Sorry, I didn't see clearly." Just as they were talking, a figure suddenly floated in the sky. "Boy, you make me easy to find." The black-robed man came to Xiaoyan's face in an instant. Xiaoyan was at a loss. He didn't even know this person. "This person came to me when he came up. Are you?" Xiaoyan looked at the man in black robes suspiciously. "Boy, quickly hand Medusa and alien fire." The black-robed man looked at Xiaoyan and said coldly, "Medusa, strange fire. Don't you want to look for a different fire? How could there be a strange fire on your body? What exactly is going on?" "I didn't get the strange fire," Xiaoyan quickly explained. "At this time you are still pretending to be stupid. I saw you take away the strange fire with my own eyes. Since you don't hand it over, then I will beat you into a papa," the black-robed man said suddenly. Suddenly, the black-robed man condensed a black grudge, and a black mist surged towards Xiaoyan. At this moment, Yao Boss was shocked. "Be careful, Xiaoyan, this is a strong fighting emperor." Do Huang. Xiaoyan didn't know why he would provoke the Du Huang powerhouse, but he knew that at this time, he had no choice but to work hard. Xiaoyan slowly held his Xuanzhong ruler and looked at the man in the black robe. "Careful, soul kill." The faint cold shout and Yao Lao's urgent shout suddenly resounded abruptly. As the shouts fell, the space tens of meters in front of Xiaoyan was suddenly distorted. A physical wall completely condensed by the gust of wind suddenly took shape. On the wall, countless wind blades were spinning crazily. Seeing this, whoever slammed into it, "I am afraid it will be cut into small pieces of pork by countless wind blades immediately," opened his eyes and stared at the wind blade wall that was getting closer and closer. Xiaoyan's pupils shrank almost to the size of a pinhole at this moment, as if by inertia. As a result, he had already squeezed the speed down, but his body was still hitting the wind blade wall fiercely. "Wow, stop." The shock in his heart made Xiaoyan's face pale, when his body was only a few meters away from the wind blade wall. Sen's white flame suddenly burst out of his body, and his body, as if suddenly nailed into the air, stood still extremely stiff. With his body still in the air, Xiaoyan's lips trembled slightly, and a few centimeters in front of him, a huge wind bladed the wall, like crushers, shaking each other fiercely, and clanging sounds continued to sound, quite terrible. A few drops of cold sweat fell from his forehead, and Xiaoyan's voice trembled a bit. This is too vicious. Hand over the abnormal fire and Medusa." A flat, cold voice sounded slowly behind him, with a little breathlessness in the voice. Obviously, such a sudden shot made him a little bit difficult. "Oh, teacher, get ready to do your best." Xiaoyan suddenly sighed when he heard the voice behind him. The escape plan had already failed. Now, only the most tragic frontal battle has begun. "Hey, I'm sorry." When he fell to the ground, Xiaoyan made a move with his palm and smiled. Without turning his head, his wings slammed, and the yellow sand on the ground violently surged. It was only a moment before it was filled. This world. The body was suspended in the air, and the black-robed man coldly looked at the yellow sand that rose up, hiding his sight. With a low snort, did not pay attention to the yellow sand at all, swept his gaze under the yellow sand. The big hand quickly formed the fingerprints, and said softly, "Boy, go to hell." With the voice of the black-robed man falling, 4 huge wind walls suddenly appeared, and they were nearly 100 meters away, all shrouded in it. At the moment when the wind wall appeared, Xiaoyan, who was about to escape under the cover of yellow sand, stopped on the ground and looked at the huge wind wall a few meters away stupidly. After a while, he smiled bitterly. It's really hard to get down. This guy is too calm, he can choose the most effective interception in such a fast time. Your Excellency, my patience is limited. You are almost touching my bottom line. A slightly icy voice sounded overhead again. The black-robed man coldly glanced at the black back, and slowly fell to the ground. Between his slender left hand, a substantial little wind whirled playfully, releasing fierce vigor, and his right hand shook. A powerful vindictive gas immediately gathered its chi, and the black vindictive chi fused together to form a black ball. The black-robed man held the black ball and shot Xiao Yan immediately. Oh, Xiao Yan sighed slightly, and Xiao Yan squatted down slightly and took a breath. The frustration of helplessness quickly dissipated in his delicate face and replaced him. It was the one who was forced to desperately, preparing to be gloomy and fierce about jumping the wall in a hurry, stood up and turned around slowly. It was finally the first time that Xiao Yan faced this mysterious fighting emperor. His fingers gently moved to accept the ring, and the huge pitch-black profound ruler flashed in his palm. Suddenly, Sinbai's flame attached to his body, and Yao was about to make a move. With Xiao Yan's strength, it is absolutely impossible to be the opponent of the black-robed man. Even if Yao Lao is added, it will be difficult to deal with the powerful Do Huang. The black-robed man suddenly came to kill, and quickly formed a knot with one hand, and then lightly shouted, "Underworld." As the shout fell, the magical power that permeated the surroundings surged towards Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan, the aura emanating from his body is getting stronger and stronger, and at a certain moment, he suddenly uttered a long roar to the sky. In the long howling sound, the turbulent vindictive spirit contained in it turned out to be blowing away nearly half of the fog that permeated below. Looked at Xiao Yan with only a long scream. He broke the dense fog, and the face of the black-robed man changed again. He didn't dare to neglect any more. With a wave of the ice gun in his hand, countless sharp soul powers quickly condensed in the sky above his head, and then brought bursts of breaking wind, facing the mid-air. Xiao Yan flew away. Above the air, the howling gradually stopped. Xiao Yan's wings shook fiercely, and his body swooped down like a big pung, faintly looking at the soul power coming from the sky, his hands facing 10, and then gently closed. As the palms collided with each other, an invisible energy spread out like lightning. This time the profound wave of the heavy ruler almost completely tore the air, leaving a shallow black mark where the heavy ruler passed. Although the attack this time was not as powerful as the previous one, when the heavy ruler was swung out, the face of the black-robed man became extremely dignified. He knew clearly in his heart, "Don't look at this attack silently." Sounds, but the destructive power contained in it is not comparable to Xiao Yan's previous attacks. Took a step back cautiously, the black-robed man's palms suddenly tightened, and immediately carrying the icy energy, he stabs out violently. Zhang Kai suddenly accelerated, and finally bombarded with the black-robed man. The heavy ruler blasted with the ice gun, and suddenly a fierce energy ripple spread out from the junction, shaking the ground in the room into a spider web-like crack. "Boy, you are not bad," the black-robed man sneered. 10,000 souls kill. His hands quickly formed a knot in front of him, and the black-robed man suddenly let out a low growl in his throat, and suddenly, a series of meniscus-shaped ghosts appeared around him. There are more and more ghosts, and in the end, it turns out that the body of the black-robed man is completely covered in it. The ghosts are connected to each other, forming a small spiral storm that is completely combined by the ghosts. "Go!" In the middle of the storm, a low shout came out, and the ghost storm suddenly smashed away at Xiao Yan. Along the way, the floor of the room was almost destroyed in a ravine. Some crystal counters were all the way by the ghost, scratched and burst, but the place where it burst was as smooth as a mirror. Looking coldly at the black-robed man who was attacking fiercely, Xiao Yan suddenly stopped, and the purple flames and fierce aura that enveloped his body were also completely retracted into his body. The current Xiao Yan didn't have any defenses all over his body, and the profound heavy ruler in his hand was also inserted by him. "Boy, look for death." Looking at Xiao Yan's actions, in the ghost storm, the black-robed man's slightly angry shout suddenly came out. Obviously, for Xiao Yan's actions with contempt. The black-robed man was also extremely angry in his heart. It was a bit wrong to attack a junior in his capacity, but now he has used his full strength. But in this case, the other party chose to give up defense to face his strongest attack, which undoubtedly made the black-robed man's strong self-esteem a blow. Ignoring the anger of the black-robed man, Xiao Yan felt the oppressive sensation in the void in front of him, sighed lightly, and slowly drew out the palm of his hand. Then he trembled slightly, and the white flame suddenly rose up. After Sen Baihuo appeared, Xiao Yan's soul slammed on the ground, and with the sound of an explosion, his body almost turned into a light and shadow, and it shot straight and swept across like a bolt of lightning. Of small ghost storms. You are looking for death by yourself, so I can't blame the old man. Seeing that Xiao Yan actually chose to head with him, the black-robed man suddenly shouted coldly during the storm. Not many people dared to choose to directly head-to-head. Now Xiao Yan's behavior undoubtedly made the black-robed man feel that he was seeking his own death. Road. Still ignoring his anger, Xiao Yan rushed straight into the storm. His palm was almost completely covered by the white flame, his eyes were slightly narrowed, and Xiao Yan's palm suddenly plunged into the storm. The palm of his hand was inserted into the storm, and inside the room, a circle of terrifying energy fluctuations suddenly spread out, flying the ground by nearly half a meter. At this moment, the black-robed man burst into endless power and blasted towards Xiao Yan. The black-robed man is a strong fighting emperor, and Yao Lao's current strength is very weak, so even the old Yao cannot stop the black-robed man's attack. Boom! With a loud noise, Xiao Yan flew out and slammed into the ground. Spit out blood. Little Yanzi, the power of my soul has been severely damaged, and I may not be able to protect you this time. Yao Lao said, and immediately fell into Xiao Yan's acceptance. The black-robed man came to Xiao Yan in an instant, stepped on Xiao Yan's head with his feet, looked at Xiao Yan who was like a bereaved dog on the ground with a terrifying face, and said with a faint smile, "GG, kid, come on, Yiwo and Medusa. The queen hand it over." "I don't know what you are talking about," Xiao Yan roared. "Oh, don't you want to pay?" the black-robed man said, and suddenly kicked Xiao Yan in the stomach. Suddenly, Xiao Yan flew a long way and hit the wall hard. Another blood spurted out. The black-robed man came to Xiao Yan's face, grabbed Xiao Yan's hair with his hand, and then began to probe Xiao Yan's breath. At this time, he was surprised to find that Xiao Yan's body did not even smell of strange fire and Medusa. Moreover, Xiao Yan at this time was much weaker than the Xiao Yan he had encountered before. Suddenly, he understood that now this kid is just a scapegoat, and the person who really carried the fire and Medusa has already left. "Jia Jia, what a kid, you lied to me, I will smash you into pieces," the black-robed man said gloomily. "Boy, I'm sorry for hitting you by mistake, but if you meet me, it will be your greatest misfortune." The black-robed man is now angry, so he wants to spread all his anger on Xiao Yan. Said, he stomped down suddenly. Click. With a loud noise, Xiao Yan's right hand was directly trampled off. "What?" Xiao Yan roared, heart-piercing. "Listen, what a beautiful sound." He kicked again as he said. Xiao Yan's other arm also broke. The tragic voice resounded immediately above the mainland, tragic and inhumane. The black-robed man directly interrupted Xiao Yan's legs again. At this time, all of Xiao Yan's limbs were interrupted by the black-robed man. "Boy, I broke your limbs, and you will live and die in this Tager desert." Then, the black-robed man left and chased in the direction of Ning Luo. But Xiao Yan dragged the black-robed man for a long time. Ning Luo didn't know where he had been, so how could he catch up? Xiao Yan lay on the ground in pain. The medicine is always healing while taking the ring. He can't call, his limbs are broken again, and he is in this place where the bird doesn't shit. He doesn't know who else can save him. At this moment, a dark figure came to Xiao Yan's front. Xiao Yan is very familiar with it. It is a monster of war, known as the ape of the desert. Because it has fewer mating partners, it is more ferocious than the ape of the forest of Warcraft. Ning Luo flew for a long time and came to a mountain. Among the mountains, there was occasional long-term wolf howling and tiger groans. They seemed to declare like everyone that the territory here already has the existence of the master. The palm of his hand was holding the green lotus seat tightly, and Ning Luo's toes stomped heavily on the ground. With the sound of an energy explosion, his body suddenly rose up and fell on the top of the giant tree beside him. The body swayed slightly with the branches, his eyes swept across the surrounding lush forests, and then he tapped the tree trunks. The figure looked like a big eagle in the dark night, flashing quickly across the dense forest, facing the mountains. "Go up and go quickly." Turned into a black shadow. After patrolling the mountain for several times, Ning Luo finally chose a very satisfactory place, which was a naturally formed cave. The location of the cave is exactly in the middle of the cliff. There is no foothold on this steep cliff wall, which is almost vertical downwards. Therefore, it is obviously impossible to climb down and enter the cave. But for ordinary people, This cave seems extremely difficult to climb, but for Ning Luo, who has Xian wings, it is undoubtedly an easy task that can hardly take the slightest effort. Standing on the top of the cliff, Ning Luo looked down, under the bottomless cliff, covered by a faint cloud. In this kind of place that can't reach the sky or the ground, it is the ideal place for cultivation in Ning Luo's heart. Nodded in satisfaction, Ning Luo did not hesitate, and jumped directly to the cliff. Hearing the violent wind sound in his ears, his back trembled slightly, and Xian wings fluttered out. It vibrated slightly, and the rapidly falling figure slowly slowed down. After a while, Ning Luo's body had been steadily suspended outside the cave, and his eyes carefully swept through the cave. No monster was found. After living, the green lotus seat was held. Fly in quietly. Entering the cave, although the area is not large, it is enough for Ning Luo to use. He placed the green lotus seat on a boulder, and Ning Luo took out a few moonstones from the ring. Mounted on the stone wall, suddenly, the slightly dim light became bright. With the help of bright light, Ning Luo began to scan the cave very cautiously. Any small place would be scanned back and forth several times. It's no wonder that Ning Luo is so cautious. The level of danger in the devouring of the abnormal fire this time is far from the last time the devouring of the purple fire can be compared. At this time, just a little interference from the outside world. Not only will it make him fall short, but I'm afraid it will also make him instantly battered into a pile of ashes by the different fire. The cave is not spacious. Fei went to Ning Luo for nearly an hour before he finished his scan. During the scan, Ning Luo found some tiny beast dung from a few boulders and wanted to come. It should be some flying monsters who came here occasionally to rest. Clear the feces out of the cave. Ning Luo moved the huge boulder from the inside of the cave and blocked the entrance of the cave tightly. Only a few gaps are left, allowing air to penetrate in. After doing all these tedious things, Ning Luo breathed a long sigh of relief. He came to the center of the cave and sat cross-legged in front of the huge boulder. With dark eyes, fiery flames beating, he stared closely at the cyan lotus seat in front of him. Ning Luo flicked Na Jia with his fingers, and took out a small transparent jade bottle. In the jade bottle, a pill the size of a longan was lying quietly. Through the reflection on the surface of the bottle, a few shadows were faintly highlighted in the blood-colored pill, shaking slightly, and there seemed to be liquid swaying in it. This mellow blood-colored pill is one of the must-have things for devouring alien fire, blood lotus pill. After taking out the blood lotus pills, Ning Luo took out a small jade box from Na Jia, and the jade box was gently placed on the smooth stone surface. Suddenly, a faint cold air formed a thin layer of ice on the stone surface. Unraveling the jade box, a snow-white jade bottle was carefully placed in it. A faint white cold mist hovered around the jade bottle. It looked faint. There was an ethereal and mysterious feeling. In this snow-white jade bottle, Ning Luo has worked so hard, and it is the Bingling cold spring. Flicking his fingers, a faint gray light suddenly rose from his fingertips. The gray light hovered in the air, and then gently fell on the stone surface. The light dissipated, revealing what was hidden in it. Last time he swallowed Yao Lao's bone spirit cold fire, it was because Yao Lao's bone spirit cold fire had already been tamed. But the current Qing Lin geocentric fire is still wild. In other words, now that Ning Luo wants to devour the heart of Qing Lin, he must be prepared. If you are not careful, you may explode and die. However, Ning Luo's Yuhuo definitely wasn't covered, and he was immortal, so he didn't need to be too scared at all. Fan held the bottom of the green lotus seat with his palm, and the power of the soul quickly penetrated into it, separating the entire lotus seat from the heart of the green lotus, and then carefully tore the green lotus seat off. Lost the shackles of the green lotus seat, the originally very small cyan flame. Suddenly it skyrocketed nearly several times, but in an instant, the cyan flame turned into a ball of flame, suspended in the air. As the flame volume increases, the temperature in the cave is rising at an extremely fast speed. At the top of the cave, the blue rock wall has been silently melted into a head-sized hole. Reached out his hand and wiped the sweat on his forehead, Ning Luo stepped back 2 steps, raised his head, looking solemnly at the blue flames rising in the air. Although I tried my best to calm down in my heart, the palm of his hand still trembled unstoppably. His palm was slightly curved, he sucked the small jade bottle into his palm, and tilted the jade bottle, a longan-sized, faintly shiny round pill, rolled into his hand. Holding the blood lotus pellet, Ning Luo placed it under his nose and sniffed it lightly. A strange smell lingered on the tip of the nose. The feeling of coldness almost made the soul tremble slightly. Staring at this fifth-ranking pill, Ning Luo suddenly clenched his fist, then closed his eyes and stuffed one of the pills into his mouth. As soon as the blood lotus pill entered the mouth, it turned into a slightly cold energy, which quickly penetrated into the meridians in Ning Luo's body, and finally, like layers of blood film, slowly penetrated the meridians and bones. As the blood film penetrated, Ning Luo's body suddenly trembled violently, and traces of blood continued to evaporate from the pores. In the blink of an eye, Ning Luo's body was coated with a deep red. The blood looks extremely terrifying. These blood coagulated rapidly shortly after it appeared, and finally formed a blood-colored cuticle. These cuticles not only wrapped Ning Luo's hands and feet, but even his eyes were completely enclosed in it. The blood-colored cuticle is like a blood-colored armor that is airtight and protects Ning Luo strictly. Slowly stretched out the palm wrapped in the blood-colored cuticle, Ning Luo pointed it at the different fire in the air. A suction force suddenly poured out. With the appearance of suction, the cyan flame above the air suddenly soared. In the blink of an eye, a terrifying destructive force, as if waking up, slowly expanded from the cyan flame. He stared at the larger and larger group of cyan flames. Ning Luo knew that the devouring of the different fire had begun. In the bright cave, the blue flame was tumbling violently. As the clusters of flames burned, there were obviously some conspicuous traces of distortion in the space around the flames. Unexpectedly, the temperature of the fire in the heart of the Lotus Land, it's so terrifying. When the fire in Qing Lin's heart gradually raged, the mighty soul power quickly spread out, completely enveloping the entire cave, and at the same time isolating the temperature that suddenly became extremely hot in the cave. In mid-air, the cyan flame rose against the storm, and in the blink of an eye, it expanded its own volume by nearly 100 times. With the change in its volume, the originally meek flame also became violent, and the flame was whirring, made a sneer sound, and the surrounding air was also burned into nothingness by the blazing green fire. Stared at the huge green fire in mid-air, took a deep breath of hot air, and the palm covered by the blood-colored cuticle aimed at the green fire, and then burst out with strong suction. Normally, the suction power that is enough to easily over a large stone, when at the alien fire, it can only make the alien fire move slowly in mid-air, and whenever that invisible suction touches Qing Lin when the heart of the earth is on fire, it can only last for 2 or 3 seconds, and it will be burned into nothingness by its horribly hot temperature. Therefore, although the distance between Ning Luo and Qing Lin's heart of the earth is only a few meters, the amount of grudge consumed in it is extremely large. Eyes were staring at the slowly moving cyan flame. Ning Luo breathed a little bit quickly. On his forehead, he was covered with sweat. The sweat ran down his cheeks, under the reflection of the cuticle. It was like drops of red blood. When the huge blue flame stayed about 1 meter in front of Ning Luo, the terrifying high temperature it emitted was still some of the hard lapis lazuli inside the cave, gradually bursting, and after a while, the boulder turned into small rubble, and the gravel was burned into piles of cyan fine powder. Looked solemnly at the huge cyan flame that stayed in front of Ning Luo's slightly illusory body surface. Suddenly, it fluctuates violently like a water wave, and he sees its own changes. Pointed his chin without a trace, Ning Luo suddenly raised his head, staring at the cyan flame that was getting closer and closer, and his slightly trembling palms opened and closed slightly, ready to rush into the fire at any time. Sitting on the lotus seat, Qing Lin released a faint cyan mask. This mask, Ning Luo blocked most of the temperature of the different fires, but it still has a little residual temperature, which penetrates and penetrates. Entering, let the cuticle, leaving a drop of red liquid. In the dark eyes, the cyan demon flame reflected. Ning Luo looked at the huge flame that stayed in front of him, his throat rolled slightly, and at a certain moment, he gritted his teeth fiercely, and the arm covered by the blood-colored cuticle, slowly inserted into this group of Qing Lin Earth's heart fire. Although the blood-colored stratum corneum melts extremely fast in the different fire, when it melts, the blood lotus pill power in Ning Luo's body once again releases a steady stream of yin and cold energy, which shuttles through the meridians, and finally he quickly repaired the melted cuticle on his arm. In this cycle of melting and repairing, Ning Luo's arm finally plunged into the fire completely. With such a close contact, Qing Lin's heart of the earth, the blood-colored cuticles above and below Ning Luo's body also melted with varying intensity. Then the liquid dripped like flowing water. At first glance, it looked as if blood was constantly seeping from the pores, and that delicate face was also covered by the blood flowing out at this time, as if crawling from hell. The sheera that came out was extremely terrifying. He stared at the constantly tossing cyan flames without blinking. Ning Luo's palm was in the abnormal fire, and he swiftly grasped it. This was the first time he had come into contact with the strange fire that was not controlled by anyone at such a close distance. Under the blood-colored cuticle, sweat dripped from Ning Luo's forehead and into his eyes. Although he was sore and painful, he did not even dare to blink his eyes. Caught in the cyan flame. While looking for the ray of fire in the heart of Qing Lin, Ning Luo couldn't help feeling shocked and amazed by the high temperature of this strange fire. The high temperature contained in it was far beyond that of Ning Luo. Unexpected. Even in the case of adequate preparation, the terrifying high temperature carried by the Qing Lin earth heart fire still slowly penetrated the blood-colored cuticle and the defense of the Qing Lin energy shield, making Ning Luo, who had to hide under it, the skin was as red as a hot soldering iron. Gritting his teeth and enduring the intense burning pain, Ning Luo quickly glanced around at the corner of his eyes, but was a little surprised to discover that the surrounding caves were originally not too spacious, but now, it as unexpectedly has been expanded nearly doubled. Moreover, the fire in the heart of Qing Lin earth at this time seemed to be aware of Ning Luo's actions. Suddenly, the blue flames violently tossed, and the heaven and earth energy contained in the surrounding space also seemed to riot at this moment, colorful and mottled. The energy is flowing slowly, like a colorful river, extremely dazzling. Colorful mottled energy hovered around the fire in the heart of Qing Lin, and occasionally a cluster of fire fluttered up. Suddenly, these ring-shaped mottled energy circles were like the pie bitten by a dog, with few missing corners, sighed. With the sudden riot of the fire in the heart of Qing Lin, the temperature in the cave, which was already terrifying, immediately rose again, and the surrounding caves also began to crack rapidly in the sudden high temperature. A series of huge cracks, quietly spreading, just for a moment, they spread all over the cave. It's really terrifying destructive power. If it is thrown in a city, I am afraid that a large city can be burned to ruins within an hour. Looking at the cave that has changed its appearance in just a few moments. Inside, Ning Luo murmured, a touch of heart palpitations on his face. The arms covered by the blood-colored cuticles were caught in the blue flames like crazy. After an instant, the swiftly dancing arms suddenly stiffened, with a smile, and gradually climbed up to the corners of Ning Luo's mouth. The palm of his hand was tightly grasping a touch of something that seemed like a substance. Ning Luo gritted his teeth, endured the fiery pain from his palm, and slowly pulled his arm away from the cyan flame. When the arm pulled out from the cyan flame, in the palm of Ning Luo, a strand of liquid-like cyan magma wriggled slightly in it. Chapter 91. Is this the kind of fire in Qing Lin Earth's heart? Staring at the strand of cyan lava in his hand releasing a terrifying temperature, Ning Luo blinked and muttered softly. As the fire was pulled out of the fire in the heart of Qing Lin, the huge cyan flame in front of him gradually shrank, and after a while, it turned into a small cyan flame and penetrated into the cyan magma in Ning Luo's palm. In the article. With a long sigh, Ning Luo nodded silently, carefully holding the cyan magma bar in the palm of his palm. Due to the terrifying high temperature contained in the magma bar, the thick blood-colored substance, the layer is melting at a frightening speed. Next, Ning Luo blinked and murmured. Ning Luo tightly held Qing Lin's heart of the earth, and the palm of his hand trembled slightly for a few undetectable moments, and his head was slightly lowered, with pitch-black eyes. Staring fiercely at the slowly creeping fire, struggling flashes in the black and white eyes. Ning Luo kept calming down, but when faced with this almost life-and-death situation, there was still a bit of fear and anxiety in his heart. No wonder he was. After all, it's about to be swallowed. But an extremely restless bomb, that bomb, there is almost a great possibility that it will swallow the body at that instant. It was blown out in smoke. With Ning Luo's silence, the atmosphere in the cave gradually became silent, and the sultry air lingered in the cave. Then along some cracks, drilled out. Time ticked by in silence. At a certain moment, the body of the sitting young man suddenly trembled, took a long breath of warm air, raised his head slightly, revealing the side face that had gradually departed from immature. Raised the fire on the palm of his hand. The handsome face of the young boy raised a bright smile, and the palm of the hand holding the fire was slowly raised. After a moment of stagnation, he suddenly threw it into the open mouth. The cyan lava bar entered his mouth, and Ning Luo immediately closed his lips tightly. At the same time, his whole body trembled violently as if struck by lightning, and the blood-colored face suddenly turned pale. Enduring the burning pain coming from the body, Ning Luo slowly closed his eyes, and his mind gradually sank into his body. The mind sank into the body, and suddenly, a misty sensory interface appeared in Ning Luo's heart. At this time, the many meridians in the body were gone, and the cyan magma that had entered the body had differentiated into strands of tiny cyan flames. These cyan flames containing terrifying energy shuttle randomly in the meridians, and everything that is blocked in front of them will be burned into nothingness in an instant. Suddenly, a white flame appeared in Ning Luo's body, protecting Ning Luo. With the shuttle of these cyan flames, although Ning Luo's meridians are protected by the blood film condensed by the blood lotus pills, the terrifying high temperature still infiltrated slowly. Although the residual temperature of the infiltration is not so hot, it is undoubtedly a devastating blow to the body's most vulnerable meridians. Under these high-temperature smoky and grilling, the originally spacious and tough veins have been twisted like that dried twist, looking extremely weird and terrifying. In the meridians, cyan flames shuttled crazily. In just a few minutes, Ning Luo's body was almost completely destroyed. Moreover, the worst thing is that the blood lotus pills have been evaporated gradually during the consumption of the different fires, and the blood film that has dissipated has no longer enough medical power to support them to repair. Then he quickly grabbed the jade bottle, and then squinted his eyes to his lips. Suddenly, a cold current that was cold enough to freeze the body, violently flowed in from his lips, and then penetrated into Ning Luo's body. The icy cold current passed through his throat, and Ning Luo seemed to feel that the part of his throat was condensed into a mass of ice, and his whole body was shivering slightly. On top of his hair, there were strands of crystal ice silk lingering on it. The cold current rushes into the body all the way, and then follows the meridians and begins to flow in all directions, and all meridians that are passed by this cold current will quickly cover the meridians and bones with a layer of milky ice. The cold flowed into the body, and the bone-to-the-bone cold just offset the hot heat in the body due to the abnormal fire. The sudden feeling of comfort made Ning Luo Chong a sigh of relief. The originally extremely pale face was also polished. Phew. In the body, as the ice layer covers all parts, Ning Luo's mind has also begun to make a preliminary attempt to touch the ray of green lotus and earth-heart fire that shuttles through the meridians. After the control failed, Ning Luo did not give up, driving his mind and trying to control this strange fire persistently. The wispy green lotus earth fire in the meridians started to walk along the route led by the mind. Perceiving this situation, Ning Luo's spirit suddenly lifted, and he hurriedly controlled the small green lotus heart fire carefully, and then slowly moved along the meridian route. Inside the battered meridians, a ray of cyan flame flows slowly, and wherever it passes along the way, it melts with the ice on the walls of the meridians. A faint white mist hovered in the meridians. After a while, the white air was transformed into a few ice crystals, which stuck to the surroundings, protecting the meridians from the erosion of the fire. Mind led a ray of cyan flame to slowly rotate. Wherever the flame passed along the way, the ice layer formed by the ice-cold spring was continuously melted. Cautiously dragged this small cyan flame to run. When passing some meridians, other cyan flames were gradually attracted by his companion. And with the help of the mutual attraction between the blue flames, Ning Luo controlled this strand of Qing Lin earth heart fire to run through the meridians in the body, and the strands of other green fire scattered in the body also began to slowly be merged in again. Together. When the last ray of cyan flame was collected by Ning Luo painstakingly, the cyan flame gradually merged, and after a while, it turned out to be a tiny cyan magma. In the long-term consumption of different fires, the purple fire fighting energy in the cyclone. Almost exhausted, only the purple energy of 17 drops of liquid was still rolling in the cyclone. After the last gaseous vindictive energy was output, Ning Luo hesitated slightly, and then began to transfer the liquid energy out of the cyclones, commanding them, wrapping the cyan magma bars, and dragging them desperately. When the 17 drops of purple liquid energy in the cyclone was consumed to only 3 drops, the cyan magma finally drilled out the last exercise route of the Fenju technique. When the cyan lava traveled through the last meridian, Ning Luo's head, which was almost numbed by the severe pain, suddenly showed a faint sense of warmth and coolness, which made him regain a lot of calmness. At this time, Qing Lin Earth's heart fire, after passing through the root of Fenju, the extremely destructive high temperature released in it suddenly converged slowly, and after a while, the high temperature almost completely converged into the lava. In the midst, the violent faded, a trace of meekness, faintly radiating out. Inside the spacious cave, the cyan flame cover is like an egg, wrapping the boy in it. The churning cyan flame seems to declare that he is going to get rid of the cocoon and transform the butterfly. In the cave, the cyan mask released the hot high temperature. Above the mask, the flames were tumbling violently, making it difficult for outside eyes to see what was happening in it. Ning Luo sat on Qing Lin. At this time, he seemed to be in a state of unconscious mystery. The mind in his body was also very exhausted because he had previously contended with the fire in the heart of Qing Lin. Floating, but it is always difficult to condense. When Ning Luo was in such a hazy and semi-comatose state, the Qing Lin earth heart fire slowly flowing through the meridians in his body suddenly started running along the meridian route without any control. At this time, the fire in the Qing Lin earth's heart, maybe because it was previously refined by Ning Luo, not only did not release the terrifying high temperature. On the contrary, it became a little warm and cool. As it flowed along the meridians, small strands of cyan magma separated from it, and finally adhered to the meridian wall that had been destroyed so as to almost lose its function of containing fighting energy, actually gradually melted into the walls of the meridians. With these faint flames of cyan magma digging into the meridians, suddenly, the meridians, which had been twisted like a twisted flower, were like the blades of grass in the desert that encountered a water source, and slowly stretched out. The countless meridians in the body are all making excitement at this moment. The cyan magma liquid left by the heart of Qing Lin Earth's fire all the way as the meridians that will be constantly contracted, and at a terrifying speed, quickly swallowed. With the greedy swallowing of the meridians, the gray color gradually faded from the meridians, and replaced by the light blue color full of vitality. Qing Lin Earth heart fire flows along the meridians. Wherever it went, the withered meridians were rejuvenated, and the cracked bones and burned muscles were also at a gratifying speed. Is repairing quickly, and the toughness of the repaired meridians, bones, etc., is far beyond the strength before swallowing the alien fire. While Qing Lin's heart of the earth was repairing the inside of Ning Luo's body, his blood-stained body outside his body gradually merged, and the blood scars quickly emerged and then fell without leaving any traces. The muscles beneath the surface of the skin. He was strengthened quickly, although he didn't become compared with those muscular men. However, between the arms stretched out, an explosive force faintly gathered. The skin on the surface of the body, layers of dry epidermis like the skin of a snake, fell quickly, and the new skin, although it was after Ning Luo's hard work in the desert for several months, the bronze color turned back to white. But at this time, this skin looks like a woman's delicate skin, and its defense and sensitivity to heaven and earth energy are more than several times stronger than before. At this time, Ning Luo, with the help of being in a strange state, so that the huge almost terrifying energy contained in the fire in Qing Lin's heart is rapidly strengthening and repairing his broken body. It is really a kind of opportunity and luck to get up. Repairing and strengthening were proceeding slowly. When the last wounded meridian was drilled out by the fire of Qing Lin Earth's heart, Ning Luo's body was extremely damaged. Was finally restored to a near-perfect point. At this time, the combat power that this body can create is definitely far stronger than the previous body. Qing Lin Earth heart fire repaired the inside and outside of Ning Luo's body. Because it was uncontrolled and doing nothing, it turned its eyes to the almost exhausted cyclone in the lower abdomen. The current vindictive cyclone, because of the previous frenzied squandering, is almost empty, with only 3 drops of purple liquid energy, swimming alone in it, looking quite desolate. Qing Lin Earth's heart fire slowly hovered around the cyclone, and after a moment of silence, suddenly got into the cyclone. As the fire in the heart of Qing Lin Earth entered, it was as calm as a cyclone in a pool of stagnant water, violently surging, and energy ripples, like water waves, kept rippling inside the cyclone. The cyan magma formed by the fire in the heart of the green lotus was flowing inside the cyclone. The three pure purple liquid energy seemed to want to escape, but it was the moment when the cyan magma was touched. It was burned into nothingness like cleaning up dregs. After the remaining 3 drops of liquid energy were burned by the Qing Lin earth heart fire, the cyclone used by Ning Luo to store vindictive energy was completely taken over by it. Go. After the cyclone was taken over, the cyan magma lingered slowly. After a while, strands of pure gaseous energy of cyan emerged from it, and then quickly gathered in the cyclone. It was only a moment, that empty. Inside the empty cyclone was filled with this faint cyan energy. The cyan gaseous energy expanded rapidly within the cyclone, and as more and more gaseous energy flowed out of the cyan magma, a faint moisture began to wrap around the cyclone, and after a while, a small drop cyan liquid energy. A sudden emergence. When the first drop of cyan liquid energy appears, it is like a chain reaction in a cyclone. Drops of cyan liquid like emerald emerge continuously from the energy mist, and then fall into the cyclone, like a naughty fish. A drop of liquid energy that is enough for Ning Luo to practice for 10 days, at this time. It was like it was raining, ticking and dripping, and within a short period of time, within the cyclone, the liquid energy was actually filled with nearly a half. When the liquid energy in the cyclone reached the number of hundreds of drops, the lazy flow of the Qing Lin heart fire suddenly stopped continuing to produce energy, swimming slightly, facing the center of the cyclone. The gray light spot swam away, looking at the light and therefore the slightly bright magma body. It's like a child who finds his beloved toy. At the center of the cyclone, a small gray spot of light is floating in it. Within the spot of light is the endless deep darkness. At the end of the darkness, it seems to hide another space, which looks extremely mysterious. Qing Lin heart fire hovering around the gray dots of light, it seems to be very curious about this thing. Want to touch several times. But perhaps because of a trace of jealousy in the dark, it made its behavior a little hesitant. After thousands of years of earth and earth tempering, there appeared a few intelligent fire spirits. It vaguely knew that if it touched this gray point of light, it would lose its permanent freedom. The cyan magma slowly hovered around the light spot. After a few thoughts, it gave up this adventurous move. It was not what it wanted to lose freedom for a strange toy. Circled again, the cyan magma finally stopped staying, wriggling his body, turned around and wanted to leave this place that made it a little uneasy. However, just when Qing Lin's heart was about to leave this place, Ning Luo's apparently unconscious soul trembled suddenly and then completely regained consciousness. After the soul awakened, Ning Luo's mind quickly swept through the body like a conditioned reflex, and everything renewed in his body made him lose consciousness in the blink of an eye. But when his mind was sweeping through the center of the cyclone, he looked at the cyan magma that was only a short distance away from the gray point of light. He was startled at first, and then a touch of unconcealed ecstasy surged into his heart. Without any time to think about it, his mind rushed into the air swirling fiercely, and then, condensed all the energy, Ning Luo's mind, and slammed into the heart of Qing Lin who wanted to retreat. Boom! At the moment of the impact, in Ning Luo's head, there was a thunderous sound, which exploded suddenly, and there was a sharp pain immediately. When Ning Luo was clutching his head and gritting his teeth to endure the severe pain, in the midst of the cyclone, the heart of Qing Lin, which was hit hard by Ning Luo, retreated a little distance, just a tail, and touched the gray light point. At the moment of touching, among the gray dots, the light quickly disappeared, and the terrifying suction surged out, and the green lotus heart fire that could not escape, was taken in with a sigh. After storing Qing Lin earth heart fire, the body finally fell into complete silence. The last step of refining the different fire to the source of fire, and also the most important step, is the need to force the Qing Lin earth heart fire into the space formed by the naling, only to fully store the Qing Lin earth heart fire entering the naling. Refining is the real perfection. Originally, this step was extremely difficult. After all, the fire spirit in the different fire has a little bit of wisdom, and it has instinctive resistance to some dangerous things. If it is forced to drive out and fails, then the initial refining of the different fire has been completed. I'm afraid it will go back again. And now, because of Ning Luo's previous state of turmoil, the Qing Lin heart fire not only completely repaired his body in a bored manner, but also circulated near naling without having anything to do. Therefore, this made Ning Luo just paying. At a very small price, the last step of refining was successfully completed. I have to say that this is a kind of chance and luck. There was still a smile on the corners of his mouth. Ning Luo looked down at the unbroken palm of his hand. The blue flame was slowly rising above it. Since the fire in the heart of Qing Lin has been completely refined, so now it didn't bring any scorching heat and discomfort to Ning Luo. The cyan flame, like that naughty elf, leapt at Ning Luo's fingertips. The cyan flame that occasionally ran up in the air immediately showed its horror. I saw the space half a foot above the palm. It turned out to be a little distorted by the burning temperature, and a wave of heat rose into the air, causing the line of sight to be gradually blurred. Holding tightly the fist covered by the cyan flame, Ning Luo sighed lightly. His body was silent for a moment, and the soles of his feet slammed on the green lotus, and his body suddenly flashed like that off-string arrow. On the mountain wall, the fist brought a scorching wind and slammed it up. Boom! The fist touched the hard rock, and the blazing high temperature of the blue flame immediately melted the rock into a hollow. The fist slammed into the rock along the hollow. Suddenly, a muffled sound rang from it, and immediately, one after another cracks, from the potholes. It spread rapidly, and it was all over this mountain wall in just a moment. Ha! Slowly took a breath of air. Ning Luo looked at the shattering mountain wall in front of him, a surprise appeared on his face, grinned, and fisted back. At the moment when Ning Luo retreated, the mountain wall in front of him was already covered with cracks. Suddenly in the rumbling sound, the rubble splashed in all directions and collapsed. Now he has not only the Qing Lin earth heart fire, but also the bone spirit cold fire, two kinds of different fires. Ning Luo should be able to find the Buddha's fury lotus. Therefore, now Ning Luo, even with the fire attribute technique, can still be invincible at the same level. And his strength has also successfully advanced from the 9-star master to become a fighting spirit. Is wrong, not only invincible of the same rank, even in the face of Duwang, he has the power to fight. Ning Luo and them returned to the stone forest again, came to the blue and secluded small lake, and climbed up the misty stone mountain, and their souls suddenly became quiet. At this time, there was a sudden movement in the sky. At this moment, the black-robed man caught up with Ning Luo and came to Ning Luo's front. Jia Jia, boy, you can make me easy to find, I didn't expect you to come here. The black-robed man looked at Ning Luo. You finally caught up with Dad, it's not easy. Ning Luo sneered. Boy, don't take advantage of your tongue, die. The black-robed man said. Suddenly a powerful aura erupted from his body, and his billowing aura continued to erupt. The grudge of the black-robed man instantly suppressed Ning Luo, but Ning Luo smiled. This guy is from the soul race, but he has the spirit of restraint. Even if he is a strong fighting emperor, Ning Luo is not afraid at all. Boy, where are Queen Medusa and Qing Lin? Hand them all over. Ning Luo smiled and said, looking at the Soul Clan powerhouse, he said lightly, Qing Lin earth heart fire has been absorbed by me. As for Medusa, I am now one of my people, so you should give up. Boy, die. The strong Soul Clan shot instantly and suppressed Ning Luo. The sky was so bright that it was originally a blue sky, but suddenly it was thundering and lightning flooded the wilderness like a sea. This is a scary scene. Only at this moment, the sky seemed to collapse, black ink was dark, electric snakes danced wildly, like countless dragons charging. Boom, the sound is deafening. If a mortal is here, the eardrum will be pierced. The huge sound is like a unicorn roaring the mountains and rivers, turning the earth over. Looking from a distance, it was dull and terrifying, a black light pouring down like a flat pouring rain, densely packed with thunderstorms everywhere. Rumble. The scene was terrifying, and this peaceful wilderness was suddenly broken into tranquility. At this time, the place was completely boiling, except for the thunder that could shatter human ear bones, there was no other sound. The huge thunder and lightning caused the distant mountains to collapse. The electric light was not touched at all, but the aftermath of that kind of light destroyed many stone cliffs, no longer existed, the rocks pierced through the clouds, and the electric light swept the sky. Crack. 9 lightnings, like 9 evil dragons, are as thick as palace vaults, twisting down, piercing the void, and anxious. 9 black holes appeared at once, 9 thunder lights, all hit Ning Luo, the catastrophe began, and it flooded him when he came up. Thunder and lightning. Ning Luo smiled lightly at the corner of his mouth. Although his opponent is the Emperor Do, but now Ning Luo does not want to directly use the soul-holding technique, he wants to use the Emperor Do to sharpen his strength. Lightning rushed out, intertwined and formed a lightning cage, pressing forward. Boom! Ning Luo is like a dragon, swimming in a sea of thunder. People don't know how he feels at this time, but he is not embarrassed when he sees him, and he can persist if he wants to. Brush. The cage is like of heaven, closing the square, and finally enclosing him, to seal him in it, endless electric lights pouring down and beating inside. The man in black robes stood proudly, standing in the center of the thunder sea. No matter how lightning flashed, he had no fear at all. At this time, Furukawa and others also arrived, and the snake people also arrived here. They looked at all this in astonishment, and couldn't believe their eyes. Everyone is terrified by the creeps. Who dares to treat such a thunderstorm so easily, and who can survive it safely? Boom! It's terrible. Once it goes deep, it will inevitably be smashed into coke, and it will be difficult for the Do Wong characters to escape. The atmosphere of solemnity is spreading, and people's hearts are rising sharply. How do they face each other? Mostly there is no way to deal with the power of punishment on this day alone. Boom! The black-robed man forced him to come, and as expected, Ning Luo was submerged with thunder and lightning. It was difficult for outsiders to see what was going on. Everyone thought that he was too bad for him. In the sea of electricity, silver snakes dance in a wild, black light swims, and red clouds are gushing. The huge electric glow of various colors forms a world of punishment today, destroying everything and breaking all obstacles. The black-robed man sneered, fighting thunder tribulation with a powerful physique. He stared at the thunder center in front of him, thinking that Ning Luo could not hold it, and was about to turn to ashes. But, at this moment, his expression suddenly stagnated, and he only watched Ning Luo walk out step by step. Ren Wanzhong lightning landed on him, without fear at all. That's it. Let the thunderstorm come more violently, right? Ning Luo said calmly, better than strolling in a leisurely courtyard. Hearing these words, the black-robed man's expression suddenly changed, and he felt something was wrong. The other party was unscathed. Could it be that he was also a demon who survived the catastrophe? What? With a loud roar, he penetrated the sea of electricity and went straight to the sky, his head full of black hair standing upright and dancing in disorder. At this moment, a greater calamity came, and it was actually a five-color thunder. Ning Luo stood on the opposite side with a faint smile, letting Lei Jia add himself, without fear at all, striding forward, and his footwork could not be blocked by the electric power. Boom! The endless thunder light, like a surging river, like a star field sinking, swallowed Ning Luo in a vast expanse. The people in the black robes were struggling, staring at the opposite side, but after a short time, Ning Luo stepped out again, without a trace of scorch on his body. It's still not enough. Lei Jia is too weak, let the storm come more violently. Ning Luo said. Hearing these words, the black-robed man was vomiting blood in anger, but he was a strong fighting emperor, and he couldn't even deal with this kid. The black-robed man was angry, he did not reserve, and released his powerful aura. The power of the soul was like the sea, completely knocked down, and many marks appeared, intertwined with the electric light. Can you do it? Be more violent. Ning Luo urged. The black-robed man was really angry. The thunder calamity released by Ning Luo destroyed the world and everything, and he invited thunder to punish the enemy. When a bell rang in the sea of thunder, a soul formed by black light, vaguely formed, and the thunder was particularly terrifying. What is that? The black-robed man entered the sea of electricity with his own divine mind, controlled the lightning, and formed a soul divine clock. Everyone doesn't change their color. This clock is very vague, but it has a certain scale, intertwined with thousands of thunderstorms, shaking gently, and destroying everything. When the soul formed by the black light and the electric light shuddered slightly, thousands of electric light rushed out, all knocked down, and landed beside Ning Luo. Then, the black light flooded him like a stormy sea, and outsiders could see nothing, only a blazing thunder light. 10,000 souls eater. People were horrified. The first time I saw such a method, no one did not shake. When confronting an enemy, offering such a copper assassin was simply a lure. Ning Luo was also surprised that the power of the soul could still be used in this way, and it was indeed a little mysterious, which touched and inspired him. Thunder and lightning are shape, Law is God, this kind of soul power destroys all things. Many people marveled. The soul shook, and the cover fell down, submerging Ning Luo in, covering him underneath, and no one could be seen. A bell rang, resounding across the sky and the earth. A large barren mountain collapsed. Ning Luo walked out again. The soul divine clock was shattered by his bare hands. Ning Luo smiled, looked at the strong soul race in the sky, and immediately shot. Your lightning is over, it's my turn. Ning Luo said. Suddenly, the sword guards against the thunder, and the thunder is powerful. Boom. At this moment, the world was violent, and a series of thunder tribulations smashed down. A variety of heavenly punishments were overwhelming, and they were all smashed down. Tens of miles around was submerged, and there was nothing to see. The two figures were vague and indistinct, both resisting the catastrophe in the light of thunder. Boom. The Soul Clan powerhouse was scorched and flew out hundreds of meters away, but was soon overwhelmed by a flood of fire and water. The next moment, his whole body was flashing electric light. Enduring the severe pain, he stood up from the void, but was quickly smashed into the air. It's just that there was so much thunder that it was completely submerged, and it was invisible to the outside world. The sky and the earth are vast and white, deafening, silver snakes dance in a wild, and there are electric lights everywhere, like a vast ocean, and I don't know how many times the momentum is bigger than before. Crack. How is it possible? How can you release lightning? The black-robed man gritted his teeth and tried his best to fight against thunder tribulation. There were already many scorch marks on his whole body, and he suffered a lot of trauma. Brush. At this time, the black-robed man wanted to cry without tears, and his whole body was anxious. They were almost cooked through, and it was really uncomfortable to be held in by the soul clock. The thunder tribulation tower burst, and the black-robed man fell out, with green smoke all over his body, and he was almost cooked through. Seeing this scene, everyone was extremely surprised. Can't believe all this. They knew that the black-robed man was a strong fighting emperor, and the young man in front of him who had not come forward, they only felt the aura of a fighting spirit. Could it be that a fighting spirit defeated a fighting emperor? How can this be? The sky thunder continued to surround his body and walked out slowly. His face appeared in front of everyone. At this moment, everyone was shocked. Yuemei knew that this was the kid who had been chased and killed by herself, and Furukawa also knew that he was Ning Luo who had made her face scandal. The first thing Ning Luo thought of was to kill the black-robed man. The earth is full of sores, broken mountains, rift valleys, and abysses are everywhere. Thunder tribulation destroyed this desert and turned it into a barren land. Ning Luo looked at the black-robed soul race person, immediately shot, and said lightly, I don't want to play with you. Speaking, he saw a blue flame released from his left hand, and a white flame condensed from his right hand. The fire of the heart of the Qing Lin and the cold fire of the bone spirit merged instantly, and suddenly, a huge innocent fire lotus was formed. In an instant, the fire lotus released and slammed the black-robed spirit tribe. Boom! There was a loud noise. I saw the green and white fire lotus instantly penetrated the body of the strong soul clan. Immediately afterwards, soul cultivation came out again. Formed a ray of light, and instantly restrained the strong soul clan. How is it possible? How can you restrain me? The soul clan powerhouse looked at Ning Luo in disbelief and asked. Ning Luo did not speak. His eyes were cold. Ning Luo still stretched out his right hand to cut off the head of the black-robed man. Under all eyes, the head of the black-robed man flew out instantly. At this moment, no matter who it is, there is a surprised expression. A fighting emperor, just like that, was killed by a fighting spirit. How can this be? How can it be? Do Huang and Do Ling are 2 realms away, and can kill Do Huang's Do Ling in seconds, so what will Do Huang do in his hands? At this time, both Yuemei and Furukawa's eyes widened. Other people even more, can't believe all this. How can it be? The audience was shocked. It's too strong, we are not opponents, let's withdraw. Feng Li said. Furukawa nodded, and several of them left here immediately. Ning Luo was far away from them, so he didn't catch up. For them, now his methods are enough to fight the Emperor Do, and coupled with the cold fire of the bone spirit and the fire of the Qing Lin heart, even if they are facing the strong one, they can fight against the Emperor, let alone said to be a trivial fighting king. His strength is invincible even in the realm of Duwang. The snake race didn't dare to make any trouble, and left here in a hurry. Yuemei was extremely surprised at Ning Luo. She didn't expect that the kid who had been chased by herself would be able to kill a Duhuang. But even if she was surprised, she didn't dare to stay here anymore. If Ning Luo releases the divine thunder again, I am afraid she will also fly into ashes and annihilate. Ning Luo did not continue to chase them deeply, although he was confident that he could fight them, but for the sake of unnecessary trouble, let it go. Ning Luo found Hai Dongbo. At the junction of the desert and the land, occasionally a few green grasses are walking around. It doesn't seem to be driving, but it's like enjoying the scenery along the way. The young boy's slow journey lasted for nearly a whole day. When the scorching sun above the sky gradually fell to the horizon of the desert, he slowly stopped and looked up at the huge city that appeared at the end of his sight, beautiful and beautiful. A faint smile appeared on his face. Turning around slowly, Hai Bodong looked at the boy in black shirt on the side and asked, "Where to go next?" "Yancheng," Ning Luo said lightly. In the night sky, two streams of light flashed past, and above the sky, the silver moon gradually fell. Yancheng is located in the eastern provinces of the Gama Empire. The wide avenues make it the only way to the eastern provinces within the empire. Its strategic location is extremely good. Therefore, this is known as the largest city in the eastern provinces of the Gama Empire. All the year round, it has been controlled by heavy imperial troops. In Yancheng, apart from the power of the empire, the most powerful is naturally the Mo family. Due to the overbearing monopoly of the Mohist school, nearly 60% of the industries in Yancheng belong to the Mohist school. The annual profit, even after removing some necessary taxes and a large amount of property to open up relations, still raises the Mohist school. Getting fatter. Although the tree is big and easy to attract the wind, but with the giant Yun Lanzong as the backstage, even the imperial family of the Jama Empire will not easily come to the Mo family for trouble. Therefore, under such unscrupulous development, the Mo family's power has almost become the overlord of Yancheng. If it were not for the other three families in the eastern provinces to contain it, I am afraid that the Mo family would have extended its sphere of influence to other areas. Big city. But even so, in recent years, relying on the tyrannical backstage, the Mohist has steadily suppressed the three major families under his body, as if he were domineering. After a day of non-stop driving, Ning Luo finally gradually approached the range of Yancheng. When the silver moon above the sky was replaced with a blazing sun, the outline of a huge city exuding fierce aura finally appeared at the end of the line of sight. Under the sunlight above the sky, the huge city in the distant place was like an ancient beast crawling on the ground. Walking near the city gate, Ning Luo was a little surprised to find that at that city gate, dozens of heavily armed soldiers stood on both sides of the city wall, with sharp gazes constantly scanning the passers-by. Looking at the guard who was almost rugged, Ning Luo frowned slightly. This place was already far away from the border of the empire. How could the defense be tougher than Mocheng? Shook his head slightly in doubt, Ning Luo and Hai Bodong looked at each other, opened the black cloak, and quietly lined up behind the line, following the line, slowly facing the inside of the city. Oh, it's such a big show. The Mo family really deserves to be the largest family in Yancheng. During the line-up, the men in mercenary costumes in front of Ning Luo, or because of boredom, whispered to each other. Up. Hey, today seems to be the birthday of Mo Cheng, the elder of the Mo family, right? I heard that not only the eastern part of this area, many forces have come to celebrate, even Yun Lanzong sent people over. Oh, Yun Lanzong actually came here too. This Mo Cheng has a lot of face. Hey, although the Mo family is powerful, in Yun Lanzong's eyes, what counts, if it weren't for the huge sacrifices that the Mo family paid to Yun Lanzong every year, with their vision, would they condescend to deal with the Mo family? The mercenary curled his lips in disdain, and said, "Hey, too." Several mercenaries didn't seem to be too cold with the Mo family, and they all agreed with a low smile. Standing behind the team, listening to the conversation among a few mercenaries, Ning Luo narrowed his eyes and chuckled. This is really a coincidence, that old is just celebrating his birthday. Ning Luo heard these words and walked quietly with Hai Dongbo. After passing through several streets with turbulent people, Ning Luo and the two had turned around Yancheng for nearly half a circle before gradually arriving at the Mo family in the center of the city. Standing at the end of the street, Ning Luo looked at the Mohist headquarters, which was as strict as a small fortress, and couldn't help but shook his head. This Mohist was indeed the most powerful family in the eastern provinces of the Gama Empire. It was just this heavily guarded family. I don't know how much financial resources have been invested to build the fortress. On the towering wall, every tens of meters, there are patrol defenses. In some gaps, Ning Luo can vaguely see the sharp arrow blades, shining with the cold light in the sunlight. What are we doing here? Hai Dongbo asked. Come with me, Ning Luo said. Ning Luo's sleeves were lightly swung, and his toes lightly stepped on the ground. His figure was like a big pong. He leapt onto the top of the house lightly. The huge hall flashed away. Afterwards, Hebadong's figure, like a fallen leaf in a breeze, followed him lightly. Extending the speed to the limit, the bodies of Ning Luo and Hai Bodong almost turned into two vague black lines in an instant. It is flashing over a distance of hundreds of meters, and among those houses. The guards on patrol can only feel a strange wind suddenly rushing in. When they raised their heads vigilantly, they didn't even notice the ghost. In a slightly dimly lit room, several figures are sitting in it. Mo Lin, how are things prepared? Above the top, an old man with gray hair and light gray clothes said in a low voice. Elder, the little girl we caught in Mochang does have the legendary Bisnake Sanhua pupil. A middle-aged man, Gongsheng replied. That's good. Hearing the words, the old man's eyes lit up, a touch of excitement flashed across his face, and he said with a dark smile, I didn't expect that my Mo family would be so lucky this time, and I would be able to meet this kind of unpredictability. The fully mature Bisnake Sanhua Hitomi. Great Elder, that Bisnake Sanhua pupil, is really as magical as the legend. The middle-aged man asked in a low voice. Hey, maybe it's more than that. Didn't you see the two-headed giant snake protecting the little girl? It's a fighting spirit level guardian beast, if it weren't because of the green snake's 3 flower pupils. You think it's because of her connection. The strength that the fighters are not, can it be driven? The old man smiled greedily. As long as we can obtain those eyes, and then temper them to the point of maturity, this Gama Empire, who else would dare to compete with us? At that time, even Yun Yun, I will be able to compete with her, so why not rely on Yunlanzong? HMPH, if we can save the huge sacrifices handed over to them every year, the development speed of our Mohist land will probably be far more than that. The old man re-patted the tabletop with his palm, his face was unwilling to say. As soon as this remark came out, Ning Luo, who was hiding in the dark, was slightly startled. They even disobeyed the master's intervention. Are they prepared to do things that are not conducive to Yunlanzong? That's no good. He, as the chief disciple of the Yunlanzong, must figure it out. Regarding the old man's angry words, the other people didn't dare to interrupt, so they nodded quickly. By the way, did the people sent from Shimo City pay back? The Modi mercenary group was cleared out. They stayed with the little girl for so long. May have discovered the secret of her eyes. This kind of thing must not be spread, so they must die. As if thinking of something, the old man said suddenly. Not yet, but with Mo Ran's strength, it must be coming soon. One person hesitated for a while and replied. Spread the news to let them hurry up. After clearing the Modi mercenary group, it is best to kill all the Sand mercenary group without knowing it. We can't leave any omissions. Indifferent way. Yes. Nodded slightly, the old man tapped on the table with his dry palm, and suddenly said, the 2 black-robed men reported by Mo Li yesterday, can you find out their details? No, the 2 seem to have appeared suddenly, and we don't have the slightest information about them. The middle-aged man said with a wry smile. Try to send people to pay attention to them. I always feel that something is wrong with the 2 of them. After today's celebration, I will start transplanting the eyes of the little girl. I am afraid that there will be more dreams in the night. The old man frowned and said coldly. Hearing the words, the few people in the room all laughed obscenely. Obviously, they, as men, are also very clear about the so-called abuse. Well, I still need me to take control of the overall situation. You also told your subordinates to pay more attention today. In addition, more people should be sent to investigate the place where the little girl is detained. There must be no deviations at this time. The old man Shen the voice commanded. Yes, Several people responded with compliments, and then got up and exited the room slowly. HMPH, Yun Lanzong, wait, sooner or later, my Mo family wants you to spit out everything you eat. In the dim room, the old man's distorted face faintly reveals a hideous look. Bisnake Sanhua pupil, Ning Luo knew that it belonged to Qing Lin. Qing Lin is a maid of Xiao Yan in the original book, who is loyal to Xiao Yan. Ning Luo didn't expect Qing Lin to be caught here. Ding, the new goddess Qing Lin has been detected. Qing Lin is also one of the goddesses. Ning Luo was a little surprised. It seems that he needs to save this little girl. Are you from Yunlanzong? Hai Dongbo asked suddenly. What's wrong? Are you very afraid of Yunlanzong? Ning Luo smiled. I never beat the old guy Yunshan. Hai Dongbo said. By the way, how can you bend yourself in the small place of Yunlanzong with your strength? Hai Dongbo asked in a puzzled manner. Ning Luo smiled slightly. I found you are asking more and more recently. Hearing Ning Luo say this, Hai Dongbo shut up quickly. Ning Luo and Hai Dongbo left here. He looked at the Mo family faintly. What a Mo family, a white-eyed wolf who hasn't been raised well, since it's a bad one, then kill it. In the spacious hall, heads of people are turbulent, extremely lively, and filled with a festive atmosphere. On a specific seat placed in the hall, there are leaders or representatives from the eastern provinces of the empire. For the most powerful force in the eastern part of the Gama Empire, although many people wish that the Mo family would collapse soon, this superficial effort but still must be done extremely well. Above the first place on the high platform in the hall, a gray-haired old man in costume is holding his fists and saluting the guests coming and going below. He seems to enjoy the gaze of countless envy gazes, so on that old face, he is celebrating. Slightly mixed with a few smug smiles, never stopped. The old man is the great elder of the Mo family, Mo Chang, and also a pillar of the Mo family. Almost half of the Mo family's current status is due to him. The Lord Boar of Yanchang City is here. At the gate, a loud notification sound spread into the hall, making the noisy hall quiet, and a strange look swept toward the gate, generally speaking, the officials of the empire. Generally, he does not take the initiative to participate in the celebration of local forces, but the Yancheng City Lord is now coming to celebrate in a large court. This behavior makes everyone aware that this Mo family has already opened up all the joints of Yancheng, has received official support, and has the Yunlanzong as the backstage. It is no wonder that the Mo family has skyrocketed in strength in recent years, and has a faint tendency to dominate all the forces in the northeast province. Hee. Elder Mo Chang, congratulations. At the gate, a group of people walked in with a gorgeous middle-aged fat man with a smile, and smiled affectionately at Mo Chang on the stage. Hee, Lord Boar, please come here in person, please. He smiled at this fat man who hadn't known how much oil he had fished from the Mo family over the years, and a cold-killing intent flashed in Mo Chang's heart. With a smile on his face, his empty hand led him to the special seat on the high platform. After a few laughs with the Yancheng City Lord, there was another loud announcement at the door. Master Yi Kong, patriarch of the Yi family, is here. Listening to the name, Mo Chang was taken aback for a moment. Immediately, a smile appeared on his face. This Yi family is one of the other three families in the northeastern province. Although the power is a little bit worse than that of the Mohist school, but accumulated over the years. It also made the Yi family's strength not to be underestimated, and let De Mochang show such an expression. Naturally, it was because the Yi family's master came to congratulate himself. As normal, the relationship between the four major families in northeast China is like water and fire. Celebrate this kind of thing to the other party. It is absolutely impossible to do it. But now Yi Jadi is in a somewhat unexpected situation. Obviously it implies a hint of flattering. Obviously, with the strength of Mohist land soaring, this Yi family, the mind is hostile to it. It was also shaken a lot. Ha, old man Mo Chang, really strong and strong. This site in the northeast. But he is about to be completely eaten by the old man. A middle-aged man with a thin face, laughing and marching into the hall, smiled at Mo Chang on the stage. Hee, I didn't expect Patriarch Yi Kong to also rush over. The old man is really honored, Mo Chang'an said with a smile. He had a few conversations with Yi Kongpi without a smile. Then he greeted him in a high position. Next, A large number of power leaders in the northeastern provinces of the Gama Empire came one after another. For a time, in this lively hall, it turned out to have gathered nearly 7 or 8 powers in the northeast provinces. It is really a rare event. Zhe Yi also came here as the representative of Yunlanzong. Haha, Elder Zhe Yi, please. With a big laugh at Zhe Yi, Mo Cheng turned around to lead the way in front of him, leading the two of them all the way to the first place, before sitting down beside them, laughing and laughing. The two kept laughing and talking. When everyone in the hall was thinking differently, on the top floor, 2 black-robed silhouettes appeared strangely. The soles of the feet steadily stepped on the beams, his eyes swept across the hall, and then Mo Cheng turned to the side. Then it should be the great elder of the Mo family, who is known as the Mo Di Mo Cheng, right? His eyes swept over the thin old man with a smile on his face. Ning Luo said lightly. Hai Bodong nodded slightly, tilted his head to look at Ning Luo, and said, "Next, what do you plan to do?" "Let's take a look at what they are going to do first, but, this Mo family, I am afraid that I can't stay in this world." Ning Luo put his palm in his sleeve, his eyes like a poisonous snake. Staring closely at Mo Cheng, said coldly, "What an unlucky old guy, I even met Ning Luo, the evil star, on this day." Hearing this, Hai Bodong nodded and mourned for a few seconds in his heart for Mo Cheng, who was full of spring breeze. In the hall, Mo Cheng finally stopped talking, stood up slowly, looked around the various forces in the hall, smiled and pressed his hands, and suddenly, the noisy atmosphere gradually became quieter. After coming down, one after another, his gaze shifted. "Hee, thank you very much for being able to attend the banquet of my old bones. In your invitation, I must have clearly stated that there is still a major event I want to discuss with you at this gathering." After gradually calming down, Mo Cheng smiled. Hearing De Mo Cheng's words, everyone in the hall suddenly raised their ears. "Recently, after internal discussions between our Mohists, we are preparing to establish a Mohist League. This Mohist League is not a strict organization, it just wants to bring together some friendly forces. Then work together to obtain some benefits that are extremely beneficial to both parties. After all, the strength of one person is far less than the strength of several families. And here I promise. As long as you join the Mo League, you will be an ally of the Mo family, with the privileges of enjoying Mo family intelligence and military assistance. What do you think? If you are interested in this Mexican League, you might as well cooperate together." Mo Cheng said with a smile. Hearing what Mo Cheng said, the faces of everyone in the hall were different. Although Mo Cheng didn't say anything about strict organization, they all knew that once they joined the so-called Mo League, it would be equivalent to being with the mark of the Mohist school. Although you may be able to get the asylum of the Mohist school in the future, this is indirectly equivalent to being included by the Mohist school. In the hall, there was a short silence. After a while, there were finally some small forces with weak strength one after another. They said they were willing to join the Mo League. Many of them had made up their minds long ago to take refuge in the Mohist school. At the beginning, some people were afraid of the Mohists, and they were afraid of being blacklisted by the medium-sized forces. After hesitating for a while, many people also chose to join. Looking at the forces that opted in with a smile on his face, although the number of people is not large now, Mo Cheng is not in a hurry. This is just his initial plan. As long as he waits until the Mo family begins to show their strength in the future, he believes that these people present here should know how to choose. Smiled a little smugly in his heart, and Mo Chenggen smiled and said, "Although Mo League is quite loose, it still needs someone to control for the time being. Naturally, it is the most suitable for Elder Mo Cheng to be in charge." Before Mo Cheng's words were over, there was a sound of flattering in the hall, and a large group of voices echoed. "Hee, thanks to everyone's love, the old man is disrespectful. This Mo League, let me take care of it temporarily." Regardless of whether others have objections, Mo Cheng waved his palm and it was so decided. Looking at the Mo Cheng who was almost writing and directing himself, some of the people in the hall were really speechless. "Isn't this old guy too thick-skinned? Hee, Elder Mo established the Mo League, do you already want to leave the Yunlin sect?" In the quiet hall, a faint voice suddenly rang out of time, and a figure in white clothes stood up, with a pair of cold eyes, glancing at the suddenly gloomy Mo Cheng on the high platform. A figure in white suddenly appeared in the hall. suddenly attracted all his eyes. After everyone was a little stunned, immediately looking at that face suddenly became gloomy and Mo Chang. At the moment, I felt silent for the man in white. For Mo Chang, who has a good face, find fault on this occasion. It was undoubtedly touching him. Suddenly appeared in white. Jie Yi was also shocked. He recognized the man in white. Isn't this the key training object of Yun Lanzong, Master Ning Luo? Why is he here? Who is your excellency? His eyes were so cold that he glanced at the man in white below. Mo Chang frowned and said solemnly. He. You don't need to know. The white-clothed man heard a voice. Young and gentle. It didn't change because of Mo Chang's eager expression. Today is a happy day for my Mohist school. I would also like to ask you to enjoy your face and take a break. Anything. After today's banquet is over. Come to talk again. Okay, I heard this young voice. Mo Chang breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Withered palms slowly sticking out of his sleeves. Slightly curled, furiously violent, attribute vindictiveness. Condensed in the palm of your hand. Exuding crimson light. The palm print is slightly weird. Listening to Mo Chang, there are a lot of words that are cold and murderous. Ning Luo shook his head helplessly. After a while, a sentence so arrogant that everyone in the room was stunned. But it spread out so lightly, appreciating the noodles. What qualifications do you have to say? Although the Mo family is not weak in the northeast provinces, but in the final analysis, it's just that Yun Lanzong has a dog. The words came out. The hall was sluggish. One after another, they looked at the man in white who was so stunned. Does this guy really want to anger the butcher who once killed the Black Whirlwind bandit group? Mo Chang stared at the man in white below. His face was slightly distorted and hideous. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. A wave of the palm. Suddenly, the doors around the hall were kicked open. Dozens of well-armed Demo Jiaqiang murderously rushed into the hall, surrounded by people in white. Since the old man became the elder of the Mo family for so many years, Your Excellency really is the first person who dares to come to the Mo family to make trouble. Mo Chang said in a harsh tone. The man in white lifted up slightly. Mo Chang seemed to be able to detect the mocking gaze under the white clothes. Especially when Ning Luo's words came out. The heart rolled over with murderous intent. Finally Shinobu couldn't help but suddenly rose up. Don't push up those boring and cruel words anymore. You guessed it right. Today I really have to come to smash the place. Old Mo family chores. The white-clothed man contained a little chuckle. Once again shocked the audience. Good. Haha, kid, have the courage. Gritted his teeth and laughed. A strong breath. Suddenly, it came from the inside of Mo Chang's body. The robe swelled. Suddenly, it has tables and chairs all over the body. Under the pressure of this breath, it burst out loudly. This old guy. The strength is getting stronger and stronger. Feeling the oppressive aura that slowly fills the hall. A look of surprise flashed across Jie Yi's eyes. Ning Luo said this. Mo Chang's face suddenly changed. This time he didn't say any more nonsense. His face was as cold as a ball of ice. A wave of the palm. Yin Si said in a low voice, kill him. Fell with the voice of Mo Chengdu. Those Mo Jiaqiang around, shouted. Several fighting masters are at a strong level. Quickly summoned the fighting gauze. Then a big knife in his hand. He slashed away at the white-clothed Ning Luo fiercely. Stood in place. Ning Luo did not make any dodge moves. When the dozen sharp knives were about to slash on the body, a cyan flame suddenly burst out of the body. Wrap it in. Kai was wrapped in vindictiveness and made a sharp sword. After contacting that layer of weird cyan flames, it's just a blink of an eye. It turned out to be in shocked eyes. The sneer turned into a pool of hot molten iron. The cyan flame burned the sword. Chances are that the flames burst out. Suddenly, a few hapless guys, in the case of too late to dodge, was hit by the flames. Now, only a slight muffled sound was heard. Several Mo Jiaqiang. There was not even a scream. It was turned into a pile of black ashes. Spilled down. Hiss. Several Mohists are so strong. Inside the hall, suddenly, there was a continuous sound of cold air. One after another stared in horror. Staring at Ning Luo who was standing still. Thinking of the cyan flame is terrifying. Everyone had a tingling scalp. Is this a strange fire? Jie Yi looked at Ning Luo in shock, and Jie Yi muttered in a low voice. He didn't expect Ning Luo to have a strange fire. This is definitely the fortune of their Yun Lanzong. On the other side, Yi Kong, the owner of the Yi family. It was also shocked by the cyan flame. But then, there was a touch of gloat in the depths of the pupils. Obviously, for the Mohist school, he was provoked by this kind of strong. He was also very happy in his heart. Who is your excellency? It seems that my Mohist family has never offended you. Why bother to my Mohist family? You have to know, my Mohist family has the background. Cyan flame. It also made Demo Cheng's heart sink suddenly. Uneasy. Gradually, I was lingering in my heart. Open your mouth and drink. Have Yun Lanzong let down your Mo family? Are you so impatient to leave Yun Lanzong? Ning Luo interrupted Mo Chengdu with a sneer. Although the words at this time are more arrogant than before. But with the cyan flame, it was shocking. No one dared to think that he was ranting. Ning Luo took a step forward slowly. In the plain words, suddenly murderous, awe-inspiring. I offend Yun Lanzong, there is only one dead end. He whispered coldly. The pupils of Demo Cheng's eyes suddenly shrank to the size of a pinhole. This is almost a ghostly speed. It also caused a chill in Mo Cheng's heart. Although my heart is cold. However, Mo Cheng is also considered a strong fame. The vindictiveness in the body surged frantically at the moment. Crimson grudge, like a cluster of red flames. Put him in the body. Is completely wrapped in it. At the same time, its palm is curled into claws. Slightly sharp nails. It's like an eagle's claw. Severely grabbed to Ning Luo's heart. Looked at the dry palms that came from scratching hard. Ning Luo sneered, fists clenched, carrying a fierce and unmatched vigor. Smashed on its palm. Suddenly, with a click, there was a crisp sound. Mo Cheng's face turned white suddenly. A mouthful of blood spurted out. Wet the placket. The body is also energized by that fierceness. He flew out directly. His body hit the ground so hard. Finally, a long scratch nearly 10 meters long was dragged out. Just stopped slowly. Is just one round. The reputation of the eastern provinces of the Gama Empire was greatly shocked. It turned out to be like a fly swatted by Ningluo. Feel free to shoot and fly. This is a dramatic scene. Everyone in the hall was stunned. Although Ningluo got it through before, everyone has generally felt that its strength is extraordinary. However, they still didn't guess. This is extraordinary. It turned out to be this point. At least the 5-star fighting spirit level is strong. It turned out that there was no power to fight back. What kind of terrifying power is this? Fighting king, fighting emperor. Looked at that pale face. Almost in just a few minutes. By a great elder of the Demo family. Become an old man in embarrassment. Who are you? I got up with a staggering pace. Mo Chengwu was tough on his own. At this moment, he obviously wanted to use Yunlanzong to make this mysterious person fearful. The direct disciple of the Yunlin sect, Ning Luo. As soon as he said this, everyone looked at Ning Luo in surprise. Ning Luo smiled faintly. I heard all of your conspiracy last night. Since you want to leave the Yunlin sect, there is no need to live. Ning Luo stepped forward gently. Once again, it was so strange that it flashed in front of Mo Cheng. The palm of his hand suddenly came out. Hold the back of the neck tightly. In the quiet hall, everyone stared blankly at Mo Cheng, who was easily pinched by Ning Luo's neck. At the moment, they all swallowed involuntarily. 10 minutes ago, they were still trying to dominate the northeastern provinces of the Gama Empire. A rough outline of the ambitious figure. But after 10 minutes or so, even the small life was easily pinched in the palm of the palm by others. This kind of almost double heavenly change really made everyone in the hall feel extremely unreal. However, no matter how untrue it feels, the facts that appeared in front of the eyes are quite cruel to tell everyone that the well-known Mo family elder in the northeastern province, Fuzimo, is about to become the plaything of others at this time. Listening to the cold words that came from Ning Luo, everyone in the hall suddenly felt a little inexplicable joy. No matter what, the Ruo Mo family really lost the pillar of Mo Cheng. So in the future, these small and medium-sized forces will be able to take the opportunity to get rid of the control of the Mohist school. Therefore, although there are not many allies of the Mohist school in the hall, there is still no one to help. Big. Sir, I really don't know what you're talking about. Mo Cheng's lips were trembling as his face was hurt by the cold gaze. Ning Luo, the figure sighed obviously and shook his head. The palm of his hand was suddenly erected, and a blue flame lingered on it. Then it suddenly struck it, just from Mo Chang's right arm. Sigan flicked across. Palm over, hand off. Ning Luo's palm is like a sharp blade. Without the slightest hindrance, he swiped past the base of Mo Chang's arm. Suddenly, an arm fell off Mo Chang's shoulder. Finally, it was quite eye-stimulating and fell on the brightly colored red carpet on the side. The arm is rooted out. No blood flowed out. A trace of scorched ground. Obviously, the moment Ning Luo's palm swept across the ground, the hot temperature contained in it, those blood vessels have been removed. It was completely charred. The pain of a broken arm suddenly. The face of Mo Chengdi suddenly twisted together. Looks extremely hideous and terrifying. It contains a scream of pain that is hard to conceal. It came out loudly and loudly from his mouth. Let everyone in the hall. There was a chill in my heart. It's so cruel. His eyes trembled and swept toward the truncated arm on the ground. Everyone swallowed. His face was slightly pale. This is just a blink of an eye. This strong man in the eastern provinces of the Zhengamama Empire. It turned out to be a crippled life. This gap, it makes everyone feel a bit like a dream. The palm of his hand covers the place of his broken arm. Mo Chengdi's body was trembling constantly. Dropped in his pupils. There was a frenzy of resentment. Roared in a low voice, "People of the Mo family, kill me this fool." Hearing it, he growled in a low voice. The children of the Mo family around. They all looked at each other. Although my heart is quite scared. But in the past, Mo Chengdi was under his prestige. They also had to grit their teeth. He rushed towards Ning Luo with a fierce roar. Ignoring the children of the Mo family who rushed over, Ning Luo still just stared at Mo Cheng indifferently, and those children of the Mo family who were rushing to the 5-meter range of their entire body. After one lift of their feet, a cyan flame came from the soles of their feet, spread out, and finally stopped the whole person. In just less than half a minute, flames rose in the hall, and the atmosphere in the hall became much quieter again. A chill of coldness lingered in the hall, making everyone even more atmospheric. Dare not come out. Do you know now? Ignoring Mo Cheng's roar like a madman, Ning Luo's voice was still so young and gentle, and that indifferent posture, like the previous killing, was not what he did. Please let me go, we really have no intention to violate. Panting violently, Mo Cheng lifted up his hideous face, staring at Ning Luo with a hoarse voice. Oh, is it? Mo Cheng's jealous temper did not make Ning Luo feel any admiration. In his low voice, there was a sense of impatience and coldness that his patience was about to be wiped out. The palm of his hand was slowly erected again, like a knife in the hand, slightly tilted, and the green flames rushed up. Soon after the Mo family disappeared, a large group of people rushed into the hall from outside with panic faces, after seeing the embarrassed Mo Cheng's expressions are all dull, who can think of them? The big elder, who is a strong posture in the ordinary days, turned out to be like this. At this time, Ning Luo's icy voice and the terrifying aura that suddenly surged out made everyone in the hall full of horror. Ning Luo should stand still. Under the pressure of the majestic aura, the ground under his feet has spread out countless small gaps. Between the rushes, Mo Cheng had some huge palms on his face. Sharp fingers. It turned out to be a hard board. 5 deep gullies were torn apart. Looked at the terrifying power that suddenly changed from Mo Cheng. The crowd in the hall. There are some changes in his face. Although some of them have also heard that people from the Mo family can transplant the limbs of monsters to replace the original organs. But I have never seen it before. Replace the changes that can be brought afterwards. How huge is it? Stand in the original. Ning Luo watched the eyes turn red. And bloodshot ink. Sneered in a low voice. Poor fellow. It was when you got the power of the monster. The spirit is gradually being eroded by animalism. Your so-called transplant. The biggest highlight. I am afraid it will be alone. Become a monster that only knows how to kill, right? Quote. Mongrel. Go to hell. Has a hideous face. Mo Chenggong stared at his pupils. The soles of the feet slam on the face. The body shot to the top of Ning Luo's head. Huge palms. Swipe down fiercely. The palm of the hand waved suddenly. The air turned out to be in this terrifying energy. The smashed sound produced a harsh sonic boom. Ning Luo's foothold. Hard board. Under the oppression of that terrifying force in the sky. It started to crack every inch. Sense the violent energy above his head. Ning Luo slowly raised his head. The delicate face under the black robe. It clearly appeared in the sight of Mo Chang with red eyes. Even at this moment, the spirit has entered a state of violent violence. But after seeing Ning Luo's young and clear face like a teenager, in Mo Chang's red eyes, it is still incredibly shocked by the unbearable chance of emergence. It's over. The delicate face, looking at the shocked Mo Chang blankly. The palms were slowly raised. Above, cyan flames, tumbled slightly. After a short while, it's like a flamethrower firing. Fierce burst out. The gloomy cyan flame, violently skimmed through the air. Take that, Mo Chang. Wrap it. Under the gaze of everyone. Mo Chang in flames. Cyan ice layer, suddenly emerged from the surface of his body. Blink time. It is to completely wrap it into a lifelike flame. Mid-air, the flame fell weakly. On the flame, I can still see the horror and hideousness before death. Click. The flame fell down, under the gaze of one after another. It cracked. No bones left. Looking at the brightly colored blanket, the ink was transformed into fly ash inside the hall. Deathly silence. At this moment, everyone was surprised. Ning Luo faintly looked at them and said, "By the way, I heard that you also caught a little girl named Qing Lin." Mo Lan stood up, facing a demon like Ning Luo. How dare he presumptuously, and quickly said, "My lord, there is such a person." Hand over. Stopped 2 meters away from Molan, Ning Luo's voice was as indifferently as ice, and there were a lot of killing intent that had never disappeared. De Molan felt a little trembling in his heart. If he waits for someone to delay, I am afraid that next time it turns into ice, it should be his party. "My lord, I will be here soon," the voice tremblingly replied. Molan tremblingly took 2 steps back, and then he felt a little relieved. 5 minutes. Ning Luo flinched, ignoring the ink. Binghan exhaled 3 words in a tone. Then it is like a wooden stake. Standing in the hall. Stand silently. Can hear these 3 words. Molan's mouth twitched a few times. Then he waved his hand and called a Mohist student. With a panic expression on his face, he hurriedly urged. In the spacious lobby, above those huge platform pillars, there is also a red font symbolizing joy. However, at this time, these are festively red, in the eyes of everyone in the hall. But it makes people laugh so bitterly. I'm afraid I will wait for today. Just finished the happy event to the Mo family. It's time to prepare for the funeral again. Eyes swept across the hall. When his gaze swept across the Ning Luo that stood in the middle of the hall inadvertently. The heart of everyone, they trembled fiercely. That suppressed them to the elder of the Mo family without a temper. But in the hands of this even more terrifying existence. But it is like that lump of ooze. How to pinch, just how to pinch. There is no ability to resist at all. This kind of strong. Obviously, it is no longer accessible at their level. At this time they can only guess secretly in my heart. This Mo Chang, how much was stepped on. Only then was it possible to put this kind of power at the pinnacle level of the empire. Be attracted, and be beheaded by it. In the lobby, the head shook, but it was silent, weirdly seen. There was a creepy atmosphere in the hall. Standing on the spot, Ning Luo's head twisted slightly, the corners of his eyes pierced through the black cloak, and finally swept to the fuzzy black shadow standing on the top beam, nodded at him slightly, indicating that everything is going well. Hai Bodong stood on the beam and noticed Ning Luo's faint gaze below. He hesitated and nodded. 5 minutes passed quickly, and at the last moment, the black ink on his face looked at the figure that appeared at the end of the line of sight, and he sighed with relief. A few silhouettes rushed in from the door quickly, and placed them on the backs of the 3 Mohists. The little girl in a cyan shirt was opening panicked Shuling eyes. He looked at this strange environment timidly. In the hall, all eyes were on the poor little girl in Xingyi. Ding, detect the goddess Qing Lin, interact with it, and get the opportunity to sign in. I looked at that although I was a bit haggard. But with the green scales that didn't hurt, Ning Luo let out a long sigh of relief, and the clenched fists under his sleeves were slightly loosened. Qing Lin looked at Ning Luo timidly. Ning Luo said lightly, "Come here." Qing Lin nodded and came to Ning Luo's face. "My lord, this is the little girl the elder captured from Rock Desert City. During this time, we didn't hurt her." Carefully hugged Qing Lin, then walked towards Ning Luo nervously. Mo Lan smiled bitterly. Looking at the Qing Lin handed over, Ning Luo breathed a sigh of relief and stretched out his hand to take Qing Lin. Qing Lin came to Ning Luo's face timidly. A smile appeared on the corner of Ning Luo's mouth, and said lightly, "What's your name?" Qing Lin. Qing Lin whispered. Ning Luo looked at Qing Lin and said lightly, "From now on, you will be my maid, and no one will bully you in the future." As soon as he said this, Qing Lin looked up and looked at Ning Luo. At this time, there seemed to be light in Qing Lin's eyes. "Yes, Lord, Lord," Qing Lin whispered. At this moment, in the hall calmly, accidents suddenly rise. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.